I open this public hearing of the Select Committee on Nuclear Energy for the inquiry into nuclear power generation in Australia. And I'd like to invite Reg to give a welcome to country today. Thank you, Reg.
Thank you for that, Roland. Wendy, Mama Brenda, Moore. Wendy, that is an English choir, is hello. Wendy is welcome. Mama is our land, and Moore means people, and Wendy means welcome. I will extend that to everybody and the visitors come here today. Wendy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reg. Thank you, Reg. This hearing will be broadcast on Parliament's website, and the proof and official transcripts of the proceeding will be published on the committee's webpage. I would like to emphasise that the public gallery is open today at the discretion of the committee, which expects proceedings to remain orderly and peaceful throughout. And if we could just please make sure we have respect for the witnesses that are giving evidence today. I now welcome Climate Justice Union to give evidence today. If you'd like to come forward. For the Hansard record, would you please all state your name and capacity in which you appear before the committee? We'll start with you, Ms. Parkin.
Yeah, my name's Jayla Parkin. Is that what you said, this bit? Yeah, local resident, and I work for Climate Justice Union and have done for a few years.
Excellent.
I'm Jamie Yallop-Ferrin. I'm the co-convener of the Climate Justice Union, and I've been working with the Collie elders and the community for over 5 years now.
Thank you.
And I'm Associate Professor Naomi Godden from Edith Cowan University's Centre for People, Place and Planet, and I've been working with the Collie community for 3 years.
Thank you. This hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Before I invite you to make a brief opening statement and then we proceed to discussions, would you please state if you are a current or former member of a political party or a union or an investor in the renewable or nuclear industries? We'll start with Ms. Parker.
Current member for Climate Justice Union.
Which is not an industrial union.
Yep.
Yeah, so member of
Same as well, yep.
Yeah.
Climate Justice Union.
I'm a member of the NTU
Yep, thank
and
you.
also a member of the Australian Greens.
Thank you.
And I'm a member of the SDA.
Okay, excellent. Yep, thank you. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement before we proceed to questions.
Kayan na court. Nala Kadich Wilman were Kenyang Yungamor, were Balaban, Mort, Duralak, Kongulak, Boyalak were Marawarak. Nala Kadich Nedinga were Bridia. Kalyakul were Ye. Nijabuja Yungabuja. Kurakura Yaway. Kurakura Ye were Kalyakul. Nala Kadich Nangangadich Wago. Nyang Court Modich Nyiding Wilman Buja. Nalak Karajan were Jinaning were Karajan and Karajan. So hello everyone, I want to begin by paying our deep respect to the Wilman and Kanyang peoples and their families to the north, the south, the east and the west. And we particularly extend this respect to the ancestors and elders that are here today. This place always has been and always will be Nyungar country. We also want to acknowledge the Nangangadich Wago, the hairy-faced snake and the creator of all waterways within this buja of the Wilman freshwater people. And as visitors here, we commit to deeply listening and learning, paying attention and caring. As I mentioned, my name's Jamie and I've been working with the elders and the Collie residents for about 5 years on the Just Transition. We also were going to have Kira Diwa with us today, but unfortunately her young son yesterday had a bit of an accident and so he's fine, but they're unable to be with us, but she wanted to pass on her regards. For the past 5 years, the Climate Justice Union and our colleagues have been supporting Collie elders and residents to participate in the decisions and planning surrounding the closure of coal mining and energy generation and what comes next, including preparing for the impacts of climate change. We facilitated workshops, surveys, discussions and public events. Together we've written a report about what the community values and wants prioritised. We have copies for all of you. And what they want prioritised in the transition and in the coming years. The Collie community have identified 7 key priorities. These are: We need to look after and protect Budja, the river and the forests, and learn from traditional custodians who've taken care of this place for millennia. We need to listen to Noongar people and ensure they're involved in decision-making about their own country. Anything that happens in Collie, whether that's new economic activity or social activity, must strengthen our community. We have a strong community spirit and want to keep that. Everyone needs to know that they're included in what's happening and can be a part of the decisions that affect them. This involvement needs to be accessible, fair and transparent. Number 4, we need good, meaningful and secure jobs with decent wages, conditions and support for all workers, with young people knowing that there's a future for them. Number 5, we need to prioritise and secure quality, accessible and affordable education and training opportunities for community members of all ages and all diversities. Number 6, we need to ensure Collie and our community can provide for people's basic needs, their health, education, safety, employment and well-being, and in the short and long term. And finally, number 7, Collie needs to do all it can to address climate change, reduce our climate pollution, prepare for increased extreme events, and support people to cope with the challenges and difficulties that may come. It's clear that the proposal to build and house nuclear reactors and their associated waste materials in Collie do not fulfil these priorities. Those who are here today and those who we've been working with for the past 5 years are clear. They do not want and will not allow a nuclear reactor to be built in Collie.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Parkin? No? That's good.
We'd like to table a report for each of the members.
Just pass that to the Secretariat. She'll... If we could get an emailed copy through as well, that'd be great.
Sure.
Copy, please. Do you have anything to add to the opening statement?
No.
No, thank you. We'll start off with the Deputy Chair, Mr. O'Brien.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your opening statement. Thanks for being here today. Also, thanks for you mentioning the 7 priority areas. As part of the Coalition's plan looking at nuclear energy, we are looking at a community engagement process which would go for around about 2.5 years to make sure that any questions, any issues raised by the local community is addressed. The community can trigger reports and they can be done not by politicians but by the independent experts. We're also looking at a regional deal which might cover transport infrastructure, community infrastructure and so forth. A lot of your 7 priorities went to the importance of inclusion, of looking after the community, opportunities and so forth. If we were to engage with a regional deal, what do you think the tangible priorities that you would like to see delivered here locally, what should they be?
I think our 7 priorities speak to them really clearly. We know that we need, of course, energy is required and the community is very aware of that, but it needs to be renewable energy and it needs to be backed up with batteries and storage. We also need healthcare, we need affordable housing, we need transport, we need all of those things. And we also need not only good, secure jobs in industry and heavy manufacturing, but we also need low carbon jobs. So we need more childcare, we need more healthcare in the local region. So all of those things, but again, they're all actually very explicitly laid out in this report. And we've done the surveys, we've had the yarns and conversations, and we've actually checked them with everybody within the community, and there's nothing in this report that gets contested when we're talking to people. So I think basically those 7 priorities are those priorities that we want. But ultimately it's about taking care of this place now and into future generations.
So on the...
sorry, can I just...
Yeah, go ahead, of
add
course.
anything, Jayla?
Yeah, just another big thing that the community is looking for is like the mental health side of it as well. So, this whole thing's about the community coming together and feeling like they're not alone, but the mental health side of things is really lacking here in Collie. So that's something
Right. In terms of the services and
yeah,
so
services,
forth.
everything. Like I personally have, needed mental health services, and you cannot access any here in Collie.
Is that right?
Yeah, got to go to Bunbury for pretty much everything. So it's insane. And like 45 minutes into the centre of Bunbury, single mum when you're by yourself is, it's not achievable. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
And I take your position on nuclear energy. You've made that clear. But just on looking at those priorities for the community, if the coalition were to win the next election and engage with the community, which is what our plan is, to make sure that we would be negotiating tangible outcomes through a deal, would that be something you think that you and the community would engage with?
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the community. They will be able to do that themselves. What I do know is that the community will absolutely be participating in those processes.
Okay, good.
And I'm also really clear that the community has made it very clear that they won't be doing a deal to get those services at the expense of nuclear energy. So the community for about 5 years now has been prosecuting a case that these are the services that this community needs and deserves. They will continue to prosecute that argument regardless of the deals that are offered or the conversations. So, and you know, in a moment you're going to hear from elders. The Climate Justice Union and our colleagues at ECU and others, we always prioritise the perspectives of the elders in town. And so the elders have also been very clear to us about what they want, how they need it, and how it needs to be delivered. And so absolutely we'd be a part of that journey.
So if you're not, thank you, and if you feel as though you're not receiving the services or you know, other things that fall beneath the 7 priorities, why is that? I mean, the community is currently in a transition. I mean, there's no secret about the amount of jobs that will be lost as coal plants close, as coal mining closes. I mean, you're talking about thousands.
Yep.
That must be, once you add in the mining and so forth, it's not just a couple of hundred, I would have thought.
1,200.
Thank you.
And so, are you confident that the way things are now, it's working?
If we, you know, keep going along with how it has been working, like, you know, actually talking to community and speaking with them and asking them what they want, you know, getting the Jobs and Skills Centre, you know, doing all the courses and upskilling and stuff like that, I think it's making a huge impact. And the difference between the way some people work with people in Collie and the way we work with, you know, people in Collie is actually communication. So come and speak to us, come and ask us what we want. Like, don't come to Collie and tell people in Collie what they want. Like, I think it's really important. You've got to engage with people in town, and
and that's
huge.
No, that's really good feedback for us, and I'm glad, especially given our 2.5-year community engagement process, hopefully would be facilitating just that.
Is it okay if I just add to that first, Chair?
Please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I think going to, you know, how it's already working at the moment, the process that we've been participating in has been a parallel process to the formal Just Transitions Working Group. So Climate Justice Union started here in 2019 working with the unions and other kind of organisations that were working around transition in Collie. But the work that we've done has been quite distinct from the formal process. So the formal process has been very much focused on the workers in the industry and the skills within the industry. What we've really focused on is those people that are going to be impacted by this transition but don't currently work in that industry. So whilst some of our people that we've been working with are miners, they're truck drivers on the mine, they might be working in the energy plant, all of those things, we've also been working with single mums or with people with disabilities or people that have been experiencing homelessness and things like that, because we know that when you have such a significant economic change in a community, the ripples go throughout that community. And so when you take a much broader perspective, there are incredible opportunities for turning this situation into something that is really robust and really extraordinary for this local community. Has the community been heard yet? Not fully. Absolutely not. And maybe Naomi can go into some of that information, because we've done some recent analysis on where money's going and how it's been decided upon and all of those things. I understand that a lot of what's been happening so far has been because the state government's been trying to really lock in big industry, but unfortunately taking a very narrow economic frame has left us in a situation where some people are continuing to be left out. Our work is to make sure that that doesn't happen, and recently we've had kind of recognition from people within the formal process that they will be collaborating more effectively with us so that we can be integrating what we've been doing, and instead of them being parallel processes, they can be supportive processes going forward.
So the processes that we've had with the community over the past 3 years have been open discussions and dialogue about the transition. So asking community members what's important to them in their community, what do they love about this place, what's important to them for their families and for their futures. What are the changes that they're experiencing as a community, both the economic transition changes and climate change more generally. What's currently in place in the community to support them through those changes, and what the needs are for them to be able to, I guess, live a flourishing life through those changes that occur. So these open questions are not leading questions. We're not asking them, do they agree or disagree with a particular approach? Rather, it's an open question forum for people to share what they think is important for them and their families' futures in the community. And so that's where this report obviously details a lot of those findings. We take a holistic approach to understanding transition, as Jamie has said. We're really thinking about transition as a whole of community opportunity, and that these economic and social changes need to have the infrastructure and support around them for all community members to meet their human rights, for country and for place to flourish and to improve. And so I guess I would be encouraging around the community consultation process to come with the same openness. This openness has allowed people to really speak their own truth about what's important to them. And what's come through so significantly again and again is that the community wants their right to free, prior, informed and continuing consent about any decisions that are made about their town. And so this coming in, I guess, with a particular agenda makes that conversation quite difficult, because when we had these discussions with community about what was important to them, nuclear energy didn't come up. Rather, what was important to them was country and caring for country, so Budja, caring for place, and for country to be enhanced and improved, for community to meet all of their human rights, and for those social injustices that currently exist to be enhanced and improved, and for the long term of community to be able to not just survive but thrive through both economic and climate changes.
Thank you.
Quickly to add on to that, sorry. I think it's really important to know that before, the coal mines and stuff were going to shut down, that Collie wasn't perfect as a whole in general anyway. There was a lot of people that were already left behind in the community that lacked, the support and the skills and everything else. If you weren't in the mining, you weren't in the mining. That was it. So I feel like this is a time that's really, really important to be able to bring the whole community together and let them know that it's not just the mine workers that are going to be looked after in the transition, it's everyone that's been left out and left behind, for years and years and years. So,
thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr O'Brien. Ms Mascarenhas.
Thank you so much for your testimony today, and particularly as a single mum, thank you for prioritising the time. I see this as a moment in time where we are at a crossroads, and one of the things that I'm going to say wasn't on my radar is the option of nuclear power as a option for Collie. When you guys heard the announcement, I'm curious to know on whether you guys were consulted prior to the announcement, and whether you know if anyone else in the Collie township was consulted.
There was no consultation. There was no, this is what we're thinking about doing. What do you guys think? It's on the cards. It was just like, here's a bombshell on our social media. Like, you should see our chat that we've got on Facebook. It's just, we're like, what the hell is this? This is not happening. Yeah.
And so what was some of the feedback?
Can I swear in here? What the actual fuck? How does fuck off sound?
I found out first of all, because the reason I'm laughing is because we put out a statement that literally said hell to the effing no, which was pretty much the sentiment that the people we've been working with closely in Collie. And when I say the people we're working with, I want to be really clear. when we're working with people, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're paid organisers or professional organisers, right? Like, we've actually done the work to support people in Collie to participate in this work with whatever it is that they need to be able to participate. So, for example, it's school holidays. There's no childcare right now. So that's my kid in the back kind of running a creche. But actually, that's also how we run our meetings. We run them at the family centre. We provide a creche. We organise for people to be able to get there. We provide remuneration if that's needed. We provide transport if that's needed. Everybody's paid to do all of those things. And we organise via social messenger at like 9:30 when the kids are in bed. Like, and so that was literally the text message. I was like, hey guys, this is the announcement. What do you think? Elders, jailer, local community members, everybody was just like, hell no. And also there was a very clear understanding that it was quite, it seemed to be quite a cynical move and a distraction from the momentum that we'd already been creating in town. And I have to say that this has been an incredible burden on ourselves as a small organisation, but also the community that is risking distracting us from the incredibly important work that we've been doing for 5 years, which is why we're just like, look at this. We've done the work that people are talking about, and why we keep referring back to this, because that's the work we wanted to do and we didn't want to be distracted. So, yeah, no conversations, no engagement.
So with that momentum that you were talking about, what do you see as the vision that you're working towards? And the second part to that question is, you use the term distraction. Do you see this proposal announcement as a distraction, so that will distract investment in renewable energy and prolong investment in fossil fuels?
Whether it was meant as a distraction or whether that's just the effect of it, it is distracting from the work that we need to do. I think, we've been talking to people that are part of the Chamber of Commerce, for example. We're talking to people that are running businesses here, and they're kind of like now going, hang on a second, we knew the journey we were on. There was a progression that we were doing. What does that now mean? What does that now mean for our workers? What does that now mean for the investment choices we were going to make? So whether it was deliberate a distraction or an accidental distraction, it has been a distraction. And I think also there's anyone that's been a part of Collie knows that Collie's been a political football for decades, right? So that's why when we work here, we work very slowly, very carefully, and we have to make sure that everybody knows. I remember Greg Busson here from the Miners' Union, he turned around and said at one of our workshops, he said, there's a bus and we need to make sure everybody's on that bus and everyone gets to say in where that bus is going. And that's the work that we've been making sure that we do. I can't remember your question, I got distracted and I know we need to move on, but she's much better at that.
So your first question was around the vision that we're working towards.
Oh, good.
So the state government obviously has a just transition plan for Collie, 2029 to be shutting down all coal-fired power stations. We are committed in the long haul to working alongside the community through those changes. And the vision that's clearly spelt out by the community in this report is how they want that transition to unfold in a way that leaves no one and leaves no budger behind. And so this is, I guess, our work as a collective and working in partnership with communities to ensure that issues like affordable housing, like healthcare, like caring for country, like jobs for everyone, like, strong and clear educational pathways for young people, that they are all embedded in the transition process. And we have the relationships, and we've built those relationships over time with folks that are involved in the formal level with the transition to enable those voices to be heard into that process.
I think the other thing to add, though, as far as the vision, is that that level of consultation and engagement takes resourcing. It takes trust. It takes... very early on, we realised that when we were working with elders, these elders, they're precious, right? They're our politicians. They're asked to go to every single meeting, to have every single conversation, to give consent for all sorts of things. If we don't have young people working with them and supporting them, often they have no idea which meeting they've just walked into because, modulars like me all look the same. So we need to make sure that The support is there for equitable engagement. People need free, prior and informed consent, not just, we had a forum, did you turn up, did you not turn up, what do you think about what we're saying? It actually needs to include the education, the upskilling, the conversations, and it needs to be resourced. And if we're holding things during the day, for example, are we covering people's wages when they're missing a day's work? Are we ensuring that they're actually equitably able to engage? Because what we've found is most of the time, it's only those people that are in professional roles that can participate in these kind of formal processes unless we deliberately disrupt those processes, which is, of course, what we've been doing. But that takes time, money and resources, and we need to make sure that that's done really well.
I also have to add to that. I came into this project as just an average modular, had no idea of any of this sort of stuff, how any of it worked, nothing like that. And I've since found out, like, there's so much that goes into it, so much. Like, sometimes we have meetings at night time, you know, to accommodate people that can't get there during the day. And, like, I'm quite dyslexic, so understanding things and taking things in, it takes a little bit. I've got to reread it and stuff like that. And the way that we work accommodates that. And I know I'm not the only one. You know, there's other mums there that have got more kids than I do, and, you know, people that don't have cars, they don't have licenses, they can't just get in the car and drive down to these things. They've got parents, they've got grandparents that they're looking after, they're sick themselves, you know, so it doesn't just take like one meeting, this is what we're doing. And in the 3.5 years that I've been involved, since my daughter was born, we're on such a roll. Like, what sort of normal person can say, yeah, I co-authored a book? Like, how cool is that? And then there was all these other things that we wanted to do and had coming, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, this nuclear bomb, and now it's like, what the fuck is going on? You know, like, we just want to get back on track. And I'm doing a lot of the research for these guys for the nuclear, and, like, to be honest, I'm over it. I'm like, this is just ridiculous.
Thank you, Ms Mascarenas. Dr Ryan.
Okay.
She's online. Yeah. Dr Ryan.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Sorry, technical issues. I'm sorry I can't be with you. I'm in Perth, but I was just looking at your paper. It's really instructive. Thank you. Can I ask you, obviously you have a very strong connection to country. Would it be fair to say that you'd have real concerns about the potential impact of nuclear facilities on the aquifers around Collie?
Absolutely. We're going to be followed in a moment by elders and Noongar folk, so it's more appropriate, I think, that they can speak around those concerns. From our own perspective, we actually have concerns around any large industry in Collie as far as its impact on the waterways here and on its impact on the forest. And also, we have to remember that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for climate change. And so the Northern Jarrah forests are one of the most vulnerable ecosystems to climate change. They're drying out at an incredible state, and so we actually risk the failure of entire ecosystems. And so as far as our transition work and as far as what's required, it's not only to ensure that we don't continue to engage in activity here that's harmful to country, we actually need to be restoring and healing country. And the best way to do that, and the only way to do that, is to follow those that have been here for the longest of time. So that's what we need to do, and we need to resource that well. But the impacts of climate can be seen very, very clearly here. It is very, very disappointing. Disappointing, that's such an understatement. It's very distressing for community and for elders to go into country and to go into the forest, for example, to go to a site that has been important for whether it's for 10 years or generations, and to see it being dried and impacted by climate change. So I think, our concerns run very deep, both from let's not cause more harm, but also let's do everything we can to restore the harm that we've already caused.
When we were conducting the community workshops, we did a social mapping process. So for those that don't know, a social mapping process is where you literally lay out big pieces of butcher's paper on the table and you ask people to map, to draw their community, and then to overlay that with noting places of significance or issues that they see and so forth. In every single map and every discussion, the Collie River was at the centre. It featured so significantly. People continually talked about the importance of the river, of the waterways, for their community, for wellbeing, for culture, for spirituality. And I'm talking both Aboriginal community members and non-Aboriginal community members. So the significance of water in this community it cannot in any way be denied. I want to read something from the report that just accentuates that. Then, of course, we'll hear from the elders later. Wilman elders explained the spiritual and cultural significance of Minnunup on the Collie River. That, quote, if we haven't got the water, we haven't got a survival kit, unquote. They then say, the river Mardalup means a lot to us because our ancestors, they lived all along the river. So, of course, it's important to us. It's recreational, it's food source, spiritual, very spiritual, wellness and wellbeing. So this just came through so continuously and significantly in our research. And again, not only talking about what people find important in the community, but what they want to do to strengthen their community. The narrative that continued the whole way through and continues in discussion is how can we continue to care for and improve the waterways of this community, and including what does it look like for jobs. So there's actually an extraordinary resource and opportunity to build an entire industry in this community around caring for Budja and caring for those waterways. That can be the resource.
Thank you. I have one more question, if I may, Chair.
Yep.
Thank you. There's a lot of your report refers repeatedly to a just transition and the importance of that. Can you give us an idea of the timing of that? I mean, one of the concerns many of us have about nuclear is that the fact that it would take a long time, likely at least 10 or 15 years, to roll out an effective nuclear industry in Australia. Is that something that your community has time for, do you think, or do you think you need more rapid action on finding people new jobs and new employment within the community?
Yeah, I can answer that. We don't have time to wait, and we're not going to wait for nuclear at all. It's not even a question about it. The damage has been done, and as I said before, people have already been left behind with coal mining, and yeah, we need to get our butts into gear and just fix it now, basically.
And I think also, just to underline that as well, from my perspective, a just transition kind of indicates that maybe there was justice in the first place. And I think what we're also really clear on is that there's incredible injustice, not only in Collie, but actually throughout our regions. I don't think the story of there not being enough mental health services or not enough social housing, I don't think that's unique to Collie. I think that is something that many regional communities are dealing with. And so what we're really clear on is that we actually need to be addressing those issues at an incredible pace, but we cannot do it at the expense of country or community.
So the WA government's Just Transition Plan was released in 2020. So we're 4 years into that plan, and it has a goal towards 2029. The resourcing so far that has been put formally into the transition is $662 million, and there has been already significant millions of dollars allocated out to new industries and new businesses, new infrastructure for the community and so on. This alternative pathway towards nuclear is deeply unjust for a community that is already grappling with the uncertainty of change. As they are going through this change, community are obviously wanting to make sure that their rights are understood and acknowledged and addressed, that they are heard in the process, and that the responses that are implemented address the deep and extraordinary, issues of inequality throughout the community. And so the introduction of a nuclear pathway is a real schism in this process, and the town that's already going through quite a lot of uncertainty and really trying to reckon with that. And so I would be arguing, based on the research and based on what community are saying to us, is that to bring in another pathway and to be dividing community over that discussion and over that debate is actually very unfair for a town that's already grappling with this quite deeply.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Mr. Kennedy.
Does the community feel, congratulations on your report, by the way. I've only just started flicking through, but it seems very comprehensive. But does the community feel, do you feel you've had sufficient information to come to a stance on nuclear?
So we can all answer that separately. So I'll answer that on behalf of the Climate Justice Union. So over 10 years ago, I was participating in some work around climate, and we were doing the analysis then around the viable solutions and what the options were. And it was, hang on, let me talk. And it was really clear. We expected the nuclear industry to make a pitch for being the solution for climate. And so we did the work. We did the research, we had the conversations, we gathered the experts, we did all of that work. Putting aside, which I would never put aside, but putting aside the intentions of traditional custodians that have been fighting to keep uranium in the ground and fighting that industry for decades, when you look at it, there is no such thing as carbon emission-free nuclear power. It's not a situation. It's not a low-emission kind of energy source. It's not suitable for Collie. It's not required for the grid that we have here. It's not appropriate on the timeline. So actually,
just a question.
Sorry, I'll just finish.
Okay, sure.
So it's actually. So did we have the information? Did the community have the information? The community hasn't had sufficient information into the community once the announcement was made, although we have brought experts into the community and been working with folks.
Yes.
And we also heard from the state government and Synergy as well around the requirements of the grid. So for us, it's a case of we did the work a really long time ago. We know that it's an insufficient solution for what we need. And so for us, there isn't actually any new information that would be able to kind of change our mind on that. But the community can respond to those things themselves. Jayla obviously needs to just take care of Peyton for a moment, but Naomi?
But just a follow-up question, and sorry we're a bit short on time. When you said you did the work, is that work in this document, or where's that work embodied?
Oh, no,
and
that work...
Could you table that as well?
Oh, so that work is not in... I can totally take that on notice. It's not in that report because nuclear wasn't on the agenda and it never came up in any of our conversations.
So the work you did, what was that embodied in?
The nuclear stuff that we did?
Yeah.
Oh, so that was work that, as people that have been working in climate for a long time, we participated with a lot of people that worked in nuclear industry.
Did it culminate in a report of some sort or anything?
There are reports available, absolutely. So
the work you did on Collie, the work you were just referring to.
Oh, no, I was referring to whether or not nuclear was a solution for the climate issues and for climate and for energy. And what I'm saying is the work that we did on that was very clear that it was not an adequate solution.
For Collie or for where?
For anywhere on this continent.
For Australia?
Yeah.
And what was the report? What did that work? I'm just trying to understand. Was it a report you published, or?
Oh no! There were heaps of reports. I'm not a nuclear physicist.
Yes.
I took advice and guidance, as I'm assuming you are, from people that actually are specialists in that area. I can take it on notice and bring those resources for you.
And that's the only reason I'm pushing you a little bit, because we have had a bunch of nuclear power plant operators, nuclear scientists, the former chief scientist of Adelaide telling us it's safe. We've had a report showing 4 of the 5 fastest decarbonisations in the world were nuclear. We've also had reports saying, and I noticed on page 33, I think there's about 65% of people who are either severely or moderately concerned about jobs. We've got a lot of evidence from nuclear that it pays 50% more than renewables.
Okay, so again...
Sorry, I'll ask you a question.
Okay,
if that's
sure.
okay.
Can we get on a question?
Yep, sure.
We are running out of time.
Last question, Chair. Last question. Given the Coalition's announcement was to engage these 7 communities on 2.5 years,
yep.
If some of the community feels like they may not have enough information, wouldn't it be a good thing then to bring up, if we haven't looked at it for 10 years, all that information, all the evidence we've heard from those nuclear scientists, from those people, to then share that with the community in a process maybe like you've engaged with here, and then allow the community to see that information to make a decision? And if not, why not?
So we have been engaging with people in a very, very quick timeline in preparation for this, and to ensure that the elders had the information they needed to make free, prior and informed consent around this, or to have their say on this. Because we cannot act outside of the intentions and we cannot act outside of what the elders tell us. Right? We just can't do that from a cultural perspective. So we have done the work to get the latest. We have actually
on nuclear?
Yeah, we have been looking at that stuff. We haven't done that process.
Where is it in the report?
You're being deliberately problematic right now, sir.
So I'm just challenging, have you done it, or should we engage in this 2.5-year process? Because that's the question I just asked. Should we engage in that?
So should we engage in it?
Or not?
If we can financially resource this community to get on with what it wants to do, to ensure that the 7 priorities that the Collie community have articulated are fulfilled, and additionally have those conversations so that some people feel comfortable and can go through those processes to then say no, which is what they would say because it is an insufficient energy resource at this time in a changing climate, then sure. But I think we all know that we can't be in 2 places at once. And so for us to actually spend 2.5 years having a conversation around something that has no consent, will not garner consent from a significant part of the community, I feel it's disingenuous. And as Naomi said, it's an unjust proposal for this community.
Okay.
Also, it was kind of just told that that's what was being done. No one really asked or, you know, like, you can't just tell a community, yeah, this is what we're going to do for you, like, this is what you guys are having, and whether you like it or not, like, you just have to deal with it. That's what's been told. So for them to then come in and say that there's...
But also, you've been really clear that regardless of what the community wants, you'll veto anyway and do what you want. So,
Yeah, so we're just...
That's not correct.
oh, that's been quoted many times, so maybe...
It's not correct, I'm sorry.
Okay, oh, that's great. We look forward to that. That's really great.
So can I speak to, as someone who's a specialist in community participation, I want to speak to different levels of participation. So there's quite an old ladder of participation actually, which is still used around the world as a way of understanding how communities are engaged and involved in decision making. At its lowest rung is what we call manipulation, which is where a decision is made and people are coerced to engage with or agree with this decision. We move up to information sharing. So this is what has been decided, this is how you will be affected by this. We then move up to some forms of discussion, not really dialogue, but rather, what do you think? So we consult with you. What do you think? All right, we will take your perspectives on board. We may or may not change our position based on this. Then we go further up the rungs to where we're actually talking about community self-determination, where communities decide what's important for them and they lead the decision-making around that. Now, when we talk about consent, consent can be given and consent can be withdrawn. So even in a 2.5-year conversation, and I would be urging going beyond conversation to actually that citizen control or self-determination rung of participation, that process needs to actually allow for people that they may arrive at a position of consent or not consent, and that they may well change their mind, and that the consent at any point into the future can be withdrawn. Now, this is really problematic when we have short time frames and we have agendas that are political and that are imposed upon communities without their engagement and without their initial consent in the first place. This dialogue around nuclear has not happened yet, and certainly the proposal was launched onto the community without any of these of this kind of level of dialogue that's required. So I would be really urging the government to be, this proposal, when it comes from the Liberal Party, to be really coming from a place of community consent, and that consent can be withdrawn, and that if consent is withdrawn, that is respected. At the moment, the conversation does not seem to reflect that.
And people are scared.
Fair enough. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr Kennedy.
People are very
Mr
scared.
Burnell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for providing evidence today, and thank you to the broader community in the room. It's a fantastic turnout here. I just wanted to quickly follow on from Ms Mascarenhas's line of questioning earlier around consultation prior to the announcement nearly 7 months ago to the day. Since the announcement on the 19th of June, has there been any direct consultation with the community from the coalition regarding their proposed plan?
So, not for the broader community. So there was, so I'm aware that Mr Dutton and others had a conversation with the Shire Council and the councillors. I'm aware that Nuclear for Australia came to town to have an event that Rick Wilson was also attending, and many others. A number of us were actually denied entrance to that, including myself and also one of Stevie, who's about to present, who's one of the local Aboriginal women here. So we were actually denied entrance into that event. When elders heard that Mr Dutton was in town, they actually did go to the council to seek an appointment or to seek discussion, and he drove away and would not engage with them. So not only has there not been adequate consultation or adequate engagement, when there have been opportunities for that, we literally had the door locked on us and security turned on us, and we were refused access into the venue, and they actually locked the door and barricaded the doors on the inside with tables to stop us from coming in. And so that's actually so far what the community experienced in Collie. Wow.
So I wasn't expecting that as a response.
Question, Mr.
I've got two, but
We're going to run out of time. So.
yeah, bear with me. So when Mr. Dutton spoke with the council, has there been a subsequent town hall held by the council for the community to be able to be briefed in on what was discussed during that conversation?
Not that I'm aware of. There has been a public forum on energy. So the Collie Delivery
That
Unit...
was run by an independent body?
No, that was hosted by the state government, and it included the Synergy, and it included the local member, and it included kind of people that are formally part of the Energy Policy WA, so there's public servants that are working on the energy policy and the grid here in South West.
But that was not related to Dutton or anything at all.
No.
Just my final question is around genuine consultation. Now, Collie's been slated for a small modular reactor. There's not a single small modular reactor in the developed world, in Western civilisation, that's demonstrated to be reliable for the production of energy to a grid. Do you think it's genuine to be having a conversation about a technology that's not been proven yet?
No.
For your community?
I don't think we're keen on being guinea pigs, to be honest. Like, you know, been providing power for long enough, like, why do we have to be the ones that have to test it out first if there's no. Yeah.
And I think also let's remember the level and the level of consultation and engagement that's already happened in Collie over the last decade or so to arrive at the point of a just transition from coal. Why would we want to put the community through the same elongated process of uncertainty again for a technology that is as yet untested?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, including questions on notice, please forward it to the Secretariat by Friday the 10th of January 2025. Please note that responses to questions on notice will be published on the website as submissions to the inquiry. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to assist you with answering questions taken on notice today, and you'll have an opportunity to request corrections to transcription errors. Thank you very much for coming in today. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now welcome Nala Kala Booja Aboriginal Corporation and local traditional owner elders to give evidence today.
Sure.
Sorry.
All good, all good.
Thank you, Jack.
For the Hansard record, would you please state your name and capacity in which you appear before the committee, and we'll start with you, Mr. Khan.
Karam Khan, work for the GKB or Nala Kala Booja Aboriginal Corporation, but today I'm here as a Noongar and traditional owner for this area as well.
I am Stevie Anderson. I'm a Nyamal Nigana Matu woman, and I am a member of the Climate Justice Union. I'm here to support the elders, and thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Bruce Jorgensen, CEO for the Nala Kala Booja Aboriginal Corporation. Thanks for your time.
How you going? I'm Philip Ugle, traditional owner of Collie, born here on the river of this town. I was the last person to do so in my family. I talk on behalf of me and my brother Joe Northover, who's absent, he's sick, so he can't be here. And
Thank you. This hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament that giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Before I invite you to make a brief opening statement, then we proceed to discussions. Would you please state if you're a current or former member of a political party or a union or an investor in the renewable or nuclear industries, please? Mr. Khan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I don't know what union I'm in, Bruce, with the corporation, but not affiliated with any union or any political party, I think was the question there as well. So.
Yep, thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Only Climate Justice Union, which I'm not sure if that's relevant. Also, I'll just add that, Uncle Joe Northover was supposed to be here, who has to attend medical appointments in Perth, so he couldn't come along. And also Uncle James Khan, who has just had a passing in the family, so he has sorry business and he couldn't come along either.
Sorry to hear that.
I'm not conflicted in those case.
No conflict.
Thank you. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement before we proceed to questions. And whoever would like to start first.
Actually, I might start with that. Or are you okay with that?
You go.
Sure. So I wanted to let everyone here know that I am here at the request of the traditional owners of this area as the CEO of Nulakala Budja Aboriginal Corporation, endorsed by the state of WA as the representative body for the traditional owners of this area. The corporation was formed as a result of the Noongar Recognition Act of 2016. In essence, I am here to let you know that the traditional owners speaking today do so with the greatest cultural authority and respect of GKB and its members. What GKB does not do is make a value judgment on whether or not nuclear energy is superior to renewable energy. That is not our role. Our role is to represent the majority view of our members. We've done the same thing with the offshore wind proposal, as we went out to our members with a survey to discover how they actually felt about it. Once we had that information, then we were keen to go out and represent that view on their behalf. What is important to us if a project like's being discussed today is to go ahead, our role in that would be the protection of Aboriginal cultural heritage with the powers that are conferred to us under the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, WA, of 2007 or something embarrassingly old like that. And the protection of the environment is as well. So we take a very careful and close eye on what's being done to our country. We represent at the highest levels in that space too. So due diligence, someone mentioned for FPIC earlier on as well. That's a big part of what we do with any kind of proponents. We would ensure that our community, being the Aboriginal community and members of GKB, would be represented and consulted through the process.
Anybody else giving an opening statement?
I'll just tell you that I represent this community as well, so I'm here to represent my town and my community, as well as GKB and all of the people around the southwest that belong to that. So it's very important that we are clear on everything, that we need to know that our people understand what the future will be, you know, because that's what we want. We want the best for the future. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Anything from Mr. Khan or Ms. Anderson?
Yeah, so I guess just important for everyone in the room to know that I'm here representing my Noongar people, so not the corporation, so I just want to be clear on that. So from my perspective as a traditional owner, as a Noongar person, you know, Budja has been mentioned a few times already, so our country is really important to us, and it's our Mother Earth, so, you know, we connect strongly to that. Anything that impacts on our country, we have deep concerns around. And we've seen a destruction of our country over many decades of activities that have gone on in our patch. I've spent 28 years within the forestry, in government, you know, working on country. And for something like this to come along, without us really understanding what it is. You know, that's real deep concerns to us and to me as an individual and as a Noongar person. I've seen the destruction of our country. I've witnessed it. I've felt it physically and spiritually. Does that make sense to you? Yeah? So this is real for us. So I'm hoping that this can get through and the message gets to you. So we need to really understand what's actually on the table here. There was a statement earlier on saying this is potentially untested. Okay, so we know nuclear around the globe is being utilised. We've seen some of the devastation of that utilisation of nuclear. Now, the stuff that's happening on our country right now, you know, we can still live on our country and we can still be part of it. But from what I understand of what's happening around the globe, if things go pear-shaped, what happens? You know, how can we be in it? We can't be in our country anymore. We've got to go. And this whole community will have to go. So when we talk about untested technology here, which, you know, those are the words that came out, that's a real concern. And we've got to understand what that actually means for us as well. So that's my thoughts on it. Yeah.
Ms Anderson, anything from you? Or
I'll just say that, yeah, pretty much what Karim is saying, that the Noongar people care a lot for their country, and it's not the first time that they've had to fight for their country. I am not a traditional owner here. I'm more of a carer. My country is up in the Pilbara, but I've been here a long time, and yeah, feel very connected to the country here. And when this proposal has come along, it is feels like quite of a threat. You know, and promises that it can be safe, haven't really, been, what's the word? Yeah, it doesn't feel like it, could be safe, so.
Thank you. We'll start with Mr Chester.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you everyone for being with us today. I appreciate you taking time to be here. Ms Anderson, can I take you to the Climate Justice Union? I didn't get a chance to ask questions of them before. I just wanted to quite understand the organisation. Is it you join as a member? Are you a staff member as well, or is it you join just that you pay a fee to be a member?
I pay a fee as a member because I value their work in community. So I've been a member for about 2 years. Pretty much straight away I begun working with elders. So what I do when there's a lot of meetings in town referring to the transition, and I help elders get to those meetings. As I said earlier, 2 elders are missing today. Yep. So, you know, in advance I will explain, you know, what this meeting's about. And
you live in town and do some liaison work for people who may not live in town to come and do the consultation. Is that sort of...
What was that last bit, sorry?
So you live in town and do liaison work with the local community.
Yep.
But some of the people who do the work may have to come to town for the meetings. They don't necessarily live in the town.
I do live in the town, yes. Jamie is from Perth, so it's really important that, and because I don't want to speak down to my elders, but I maybe can understand things a bit more. The elders are so busy, you know, dealing with all these different organisations. So I am able to help, and it's really valuable that in any consultation that there is that liaison person to really bring it all together.
Thank you, because a lot of the hearings we've held around the country have focused a fair bit on this question of social licence and consent, which is really difficult to establish or figure out when you've got an issue where people have different views on it. And Mr Jorgensen, you referred to the majority view. GKB will try and assess that. But we've already heard today that consent can be given and then taken away. It could be a fluid process. How do you go about establishing what the majority view looks like from your perspective?
Yeah, okay. So what we've done in the past is a survey out to our members, which is 1,000 plus Noongar people that are connected to the GKB country.
And across how big a geographic area is that?
So that sits within our ILUA, our Indigenous Land Use Agreement with the state government, which is fairly broad. Starts from Kwinana down through to Collie and then out into the wet belt.
Big area, yep.
Yeah, it's quite a big area. In particular, I mentioned earlier on a survey around the Bunbury offshore wind zone declaration, and there was some fairly polarised views on that within our members. You guys might be interested to know that none of the objections from our members were due to visual amenity. I think that speaks a lot. It's more around environmental impact and the social licence aspect of it rather than visual amenity. So, and it's a good point, that the shifting tides of opinion. We haven't asked for an opinion from our members as yet because we don't think there's enough information available to go out with that questionnaire.
No, I appreciate that, and I think Mr O'Brien referred to earlier that any consultation would be quite extensive to try and provide some of that gap in the factual information.
Yep.
One of the interesting things that I found with the inquiry was we heard in Queensland from former members of the Greens who are very supportive of renewable energy and still supportive of large-scale renewables. Their argument was if you had a small amount of nuclear in the energy mix in Australia, you would reduce the actual footprint of the overbuild of large-scale renewables. So acknowledging that whether it's a solar farm, a wind farm or a coal-fired power plant or a nuclear power plant, there's an impact on the environment. And their position put to us was if you had a small amount of nuclear in the grid, you wouldn't have to overbuild quite as much of the large-scale renewables. So I guess it's not really something you can particularly comment on, but it was an interesting reflection on everything we're doing is having an impact on the environment. How do we mitigate and keep the lights on, I guess, is the essence of my question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I need to start by saying we're not in a position of making value judgments on any kind of alternative energy, but I do have to say that since the state government has slated the closure of Collie, the mines and the power stations, that every kind of alternative energy proposals have come through our office, which includes everything from offshore wind to onshore wind, biofuel, green energy, green hydrogen, brown hydrogen and blue hydrogen. So there's been a lot. And I suspect with the amount of onshore wind that's being proposed out the back of Collie here, it'd be difficult to walk through the bush without walking to a turbine, I suspect. So it'd be interesting or be welcome to see a little bit of common sense come to this whole aspect of what this is going to look like in providing the state's needs through changes in energy provision in Collie, keeping in mind that this town, in my view now, has the opportunity to be a centre of excellence for alternative energy, whatever that might look like as a way forward for the town.
Last question, Chair. I just noticed the package for Collie fact sheet put out by the state government indicates 547.4 million package for Collie, of which $300 million is a pipeline for decommissioning, so it's actual work that has to occur anyway. I just noticed it's a very large part of that fund. Looks like it's directed at the decommissioning projects. But Mr Khan, can I take you to your evidence about working in the forest? I'm particularly interested in your practical skills in the bush. From a natural resource management, is what the bureaucrats like to call it, are we spending enough now? I mean, in Western Australia, are we spending enough now to sustainably manage your natural resources in consultation and in cooperation with the Indigenous owners, or are we underspending on that already?
Well, I mean, I think you're underspending. Obviously, we want to take a lead role in looking after our country again, a role that's been taken from us from history. A couple of hundred years of that opportunity being taken away from us. So, and I've always had a view that we should be able to make decisions on what happens on our country. And this topic that we're talking about now, we need to be able to make a decision on how this, if it does get supported, if it gets rolled out. Our view has to be considered in this conversation as well. So, forestry is forestry, and looking after country is important, but this stuff here that you're talking about is different, okay? If a wind turbine sitting at the back of Collie here falls over, it'll fall over. and impact that area. If this thing crashes here, what's the impact of that? We don't know that. Do people in this room know what the impact of that is? Because we don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So this is what we're trying to get to.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Chester. Mr Bennell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for providing evidence today. I'm interested to just get to a couple of points, and just for clarity, one of my other committees that I sit on is the Joint Standing Committee of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Affairs. So in that committee, we've had a lot of discussion around connection to country and healing and learning that happens on country. I'm just interested to get your perspective of your local community, what the key issues are for you and the impacts of that ability to be able to learn on country, to heal on country, etc. If, as you say, Mr Khan, something goes wrong and we have a wide-scale incident that means land is contaminated.
Well, my view is that the governments prior to even now and into the future have never ever fixed up what's left behind anyway, whether you're Australia, state or local. So nobody wants to take the blame. You know what I mean? What's left behind is left behind. This acidic water that's left behind in these places is absolutely shocking. If it doesn't be treated, it can't be put back into the system. So where they're going to get stuff like that to treat it? There's only nature. I've been working since 2001 on stuff like this. It's shocking. Sometimes you feel like you have to give up, but you don't. You keep going. Otherwise, what does the future look for the great grandchildren right down the line?
I can add.
Yep.
So potentially, if there was risks, when you're talking about mucking around with Aboriginal people's connection to country, and there's a risk of something happening to the country here, you're creating a problem, because when Aboriginal people aren't on their country, they don't have access to sacred sites, there's a roll-on effect, and it could be something that the government could be they're happening. So you look at the roll-on effects from the stolen generation. My own family, my grandfather was taken, one of my grandmothers were taken, and there's a lot of effects that have happened when they were taken from their country up north to down south. And it really does create issues. So if there was something to happen here and all the water here and the underground water got contaminated, you'd be looking at something pretty big, not just a work issue.
Mr. Cream, do you have anything further to add?
What was the question again? What was the comment?
Just as far as the localised impact to your ability to be on country for the next generation that sit behind you, to be able to learn on country, for your people to be able to heal on country. Like, I'm interested to get the immediate impact to your people if we were to have an incident which meant the ongoing exclusion of not just First Nations people but all people from those lands if there was to be an incident.
Well, I guess you've got to have a country to go to, and if you don't have access, then that's the impact. Then we can't meet all our cultural and spiritual obligations of our country. So It's a given. And when we talk about country and Aboriginal people, Noongar people talk about country, we're not just talking on our behalf, we're talking about human beings. Because if we don't look after our country, it affects all of us. So that's the reality of the world we live in. So, you know what I mean? So I guess our connection, might be deeper than, the Australian community. But we want them people to join in with us on that and understand what that connection is, because, there's conversations around how can you truly live and be part of this country if you only live on it and not in it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And the only way you're going to live in it is to get connected with your traditional owners that live and breathe this country. Does that make sense also?
This is the importance of being custodial guardians of the lands on which we're on. Yeah.
100%.
Thank you, Mr Burnell. Dr Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I can't be with you physically this afternoon. Could I ask, please, about your feelings regarding the possible impact of nuclear power stations on the water supplies and aquifers in and around Collie?
Well, this is Philip Bugle here. Like I said, I've been working since 2001 on the waterways and the water that's left behind from mining around this country. And the water that's left behind, if you can't treat it, it's very acidic. It's pH 3. So being pH 3, you can't do much with it. You've got to treat it, then use it. And some of that water's been used out at Muji Power Station now because it gets treated. We set up a system where the mining company treated the water and put back into the east end of the Collie River. So I was doing all that hoping to think that it'll improve things. But then only a couple of weeks ago I heard that once the mining stops, then so will that water treatment. So what are they going to do with that water? It's going to seep back into the aquifer.
Did you want to speak about the spiritual connection among people to
Yes, and what we believe in, especially here in Collie, is a thing called the Nunangarat Wagu. Now, we do our custodial ceremonies around Minanup Pool, whether it's birthing and whether it's death. So we still do cultural things here. And we had to prove that to the federal government, and we had them have a court down here, court hearing, to prove that we still are cultural people here. So it's a hard thing to swallow sometimes, you know. I hope I answered that for you.
Thank you. Could I also ask, we've heard a lot from other First Nations communities about social licence and their concerns about not being appropriately consulted about potential developments like nuclear power plants on country. What are your feelings about that? Do you feel that you've been adequately consulted to date? And if not, what sort of consultation do you think would be appropriate going forward? How long would it take and what would it look like?
Well, we haven't, and we don't, and we still haven't been consulted about anything that goes on in Collie. Like you've seen on the news and the rest of West Australia, or whoever's seen the news, Mr Dutton just ignored us and put us off. But why aren't we consulted with? But we should have been the first people that they came and talked to, or any government in this town, whether it's any town now. We were supposed to be promised these sort of rights when we got our land back. But then you find out all sorts of things that's been happening behind doors. Why are they drilling our country out here in the bush for the future for Worsley and South 32 and places like that, and getting away with it? no consultation is not good enough for us. There's no clarity on everything. We need it, and we should have got it right from the start, not this now. And I'd like to say another thing. On the Climate Justice League, none of them people live here. They don't live in this town. We do. Stevie is our connection to them. Just like to point that out. And you know, we're here for multi-generations concerns, not just our own. We know that that's what the future is. So these are the things that the government needs to understand, that we want that as well, but we want the best and the help that's needed to be done properly.
Thank you, Doctor. Anything else, Dr.
Thank
Ryan?
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much for being here today. And just my own declaration, I think, Ms Anderson, we have met before, I think, maybe Mr Ugle too, I think at a previous forum I ran here a few months ago. So just for the information of the committee, just to be very transparent about that. So lovely to see you again and to have another conversation with you, and do appreciate the opportunity to get your views, as well as Mr Khan, yours, and on behalf of the group, Mr Jorgensen. I've sort of been reflecting a little bit on different elements of feedback from each of you, and Mr Khan, you are saying that it's a whole bunch of questions about, you know, what would be the impact if something went wrong, and also Mr Jorgensen saying that there's still just not enough information out there to draw a firm conclusion, and also listening to you, Mr Ugle, just sort of your views about the past, and that you haven't felt as though you've been listened to. Because our approach is to have up to 2.5 years of comprehensive community engagement, which will allow the community to identify the key things they want answers on, and to get answers, not from the politicians, but from independent experts. Is that something you think that the local community, the traditional owners in particular, would welcome that opportunity, given you haven't had it in the past, clearly?
Yeah, well, I'll answer you straight out there. Yes, we would. That should have happened at the start, mate. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to be making anything hard for no one. I mean, to say there's always going to be talk about the economical values of all this happening. We're worried about jobs. Of course we are. But renewable jobs too can put jobs and train these people, if they're young enough, if they want to be trained, to go into that sort of field of work. So there's always going to be an answer for whatever questions come at you.
No, thank you, and I share your view on renewables too.
Yeah.
And so much as Mr Jorgensen, you sort of said no value judgments. So much we're here talking about nuclear energy, at least as the spokesperson from the coalition. We don't make value judgments either on technologies. Our approach is all of the above. Let's see what is best going to work, and it's sort of having a balanced mix of things. As we think further about our plan to have a comprehensive community engagement process, do you have any other advice for us if we were to be elected, based on the experience to date that clearly hasn't been working? What's your candid advice to us? Well, if you want to do this right on the ground and actually have a proper community engagement, what are the things we should take away and think about? Maybe Ms Anderson.
Yeah, so you're going to be doing a number of consultations, you know, probably more than one a month, because or doing it at a time when it's available to people, and also paying them, because nuclear is it's a big thing, but, you know, we've all got other things, whether it's kids, jobs, other meetings, making sure you value those people's time, digging, really going like down and helping those people who have a really good opinion and need to be consulted, making sure that they get to that meeting, whether it's transport, you know, consultation before the consultation, because that is what is needed, you know. A lot of old people in all the way around are looking after, you know, grandchildren. So, you know, the logistics of getting to meetings and getting a carer for those kids is pretty hard.
Thank you. Please, Mr. Carter.
It's interesting that in this day and age, you've got to ask what do we need to do to consult? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I just don't get it, because, you know, this has been going on for so long, and you're still asking these questions in 2024. You know, what can we do better to consult? Well, probably, you know, don't just make an announcement on the television and then rock into town and you don't let the TOs come and have a conversation. That's, I mean, anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Yeah.
Definitely. Sorry, I'll just add one thing. Definitely doing it different to your last forum that you did at Roach Park. Just make it, much more inviting. Me and the traditional owners, we rocked it up thinking that we were crashing it, but we wanted to be involved. It turns out it was okay to be there, but it seemed very hidden, the invitation. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Jorgensen, anything?
This harks back a bit to the doctor's comment around, or question around social licence to operate as well. So one of the things missing from social licence discussions, and this goes, you know, across the whole energy portfolio, or any other portfolio for that matter as well, and the social surrounds aspect of EPA approvals, is the soft language that's still being used by government around consulting with traditional owners. It's become quite awkward and difficult, particularly in our area right at the moment. As I mentioned earlier, the amount of proponents that are coming to see us who have been told by the state and federal government that they need to consult with the regional corporation, but not telling anyone what that consultation has to end in. What does it look like? What does that mean, right? So what, instead of using best endeavours kind of language or open-end consultation with traditional owners, we want the proponents to be sure that, to know that there's an outcome has to come from that. And this is that social licence to operate stuff. If you're coming to see us, they need to have our endorsement for the project to go ahead, rather than just a consultation period. And that's my advice across the board at all levels of government, because it's become particularly awkward.
Thank you.
Well, my view on that is that for the future, you need to account for all the community, not just one little aspect. I mean, to say, we as a community, we sit here and we feel so frustrated that we're being unheard or untalked to about anything like that. I mean, to say, the Shire Council are voted in by the people of Collie. They're not here to be the end-all and give the say to, yes, let's go, because that's not the way it's meant to be. They get voted, and they can be voted out when they go for their next term. That's how it works. Isn't that how Australia's been working for ever since the first arrival, when they made laws? So why has things changed? Why have we not been put in there to be told that we want this? And do we agree with this? You know?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Kenny, we'll have time for one question from you, then one question from Mr.
Just one
Mascarene.
question. Sure, I'll just ask one question. that Mr O'Brien, the Energy Minister, has just said, wants to engage on a 2.5 getting ahead of myself, wanting to engage on a 2.5-year process. And in some ways, I wish you'd had the experience we've had for the last 3 weeks, because we've seen energy experts from all over the world. We've spoken to renewables experts. We've been able to have these people, this committee here, from overseas, from all over Australia, chief scientists. Mr Khan, I know you asked a question about how dangerous it is. We had David Packham in Gippsland tell us wind is 25% more dangerous, hydro is 43 times more dangerous, and coal 820 times more dangerous. No one here to say whether he's wrong or right, but he was at CSIRO. I think I'm hopeful in that 2.5 years we can give each community the opportunity to get that level of engagement to then come to their own decision, as Mr O'Brien was saying. That's what I hope consultation would deliver. And my question is on jobs. On the jobs front, we've also heard evidence and had evidence submitted from the Department of Energy in the US. Nuclear jobs can pay 50% more than renewable jobs. 77% of coal jobs can transfer to nuclear power plants. What would you say the biggest needs of the Collie community are right now in your perspective?
Well, I think you need to hear from Uncle.
Do you want to go first, Uncle?
No, you just go in there.
First, we need to have those conversations with traditional owners first and foremost. We need, the main one is the jobs, always, but it's not just that. You go down, we need support, education, training. Our young ones need help with mental health. Get the drugs away. We need to get the young ones up and moving. Jobs and money is just not going to cut it for some of us. You can chuck a uniform on a kid and put them in the factory, but it's not going to fix everything. So, definitely the mental health support.
I think it's important to note that when we kind of take the view at the corporation around jobs from an industry being a given, below the line rather than above the line, what we want to focus on, generational change when it comes to jobs, comes from providing meaningful and interesting jobs that are attached to a career path and hopefully a tertiary qualification as well. So I think that's really important, and it needs to be fleshed out in any kind of proposal, what that looks like. So jobs, support for Noongar people who would like to start a small business, around any kind of proposal, really important. And I think, just to touch on Mr. Khan's, point, point around the danger of a proposal, we have to remember what he's talking about is the country being uninhabitable for half-lives rather than just getting injured in a coal mine, right? So,
it's a big one to get comfortable with. Okay, thank you.
My view is that these people can be trained for positions in renewable. So I can't see why that has to be an aspect whether you worked in a powerhouse and you can work in a nuclear powerhouse. What's so different? If you learn how to run it, you can do it. The other thing is that we talk about promises, the promises that are made to the Noongar people all the time, and they've been broken that many times. I don't think there was one promise that's ever been given, unless I go back to when I was 18 years of age. So it's no use sitting here and thinking that I'm not going to bring up, where's their policies, Indigenous policies with these companies? I work on, say, 10%. You're never going to get 10% in a lifetime. or maybe 10, 20 lifetimes, right? But why aren't they negotiating with us, big business, and doing this? Why aren't they coming and see the people and ask us if we want a policy for the Indigenous people of this community? Why is it so that multi-billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money have been given back to the government and no Noongars or Aboriginal people in the southwest own their own houses? A lot of answers that I need to know. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to jobs and that, nothing's been done.
Can I just add, sorry, I can't believe I forgot, Arnie's just reminded me that we are really short on housing in Collie, like it's impossible. If you, for some reason, you're renting a house and the owner's selling it, you're in big trouble because you're not going to be able to find somewhere to live in Collie. And also just, adding like childcare and just that support for families. Mums aren't supposed to be doing it all on their own, and you got mums with trauma who are doing it on their own, putting it on their kids. Those kids are going to have trauma, and you're just going to keep getting these people growing up not being able to live a good life, like thrive, because they're forever trying to survive. So there's literally something, that we need to work on with that.
Thank you, Ms Anderson. Ms Mascarenas, just quickly due for a question.
I'll ask a yes/no question. So we've been talking a lot about prior and free and informed consent, and if the coalition is genuine about the consultation process, do you think that Collie should be able to say no and the proposal doesn't go ahead, or alternatively, they can just do what they like?
I truly feel at the moment that 2.5 years is what they want to win us over and make us say yes.
Any other comments?
I'd just like to say that I've been informed by the elders of this town, so I speak for me and them, and it's just simple no. I don't care what government you're in, what background you come from, we don't want it, and so we're going to say no, all right? So please understand us. When we say no, we've done our homework. We know that it's no good for no one. Where are you going to put this plutonium? What's plutonium good for? One thing, mass destruction of human life. So the answer is no for me and my people. Understand it, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time today. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, including questions on notice, please forward it to the Secretariat by Friday, the 10th of January 2025. Please note that responses to questions on notice will be published on the website as submissions to the inquiry. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to assist you with answering questions taken on notice today, and you have an opportunity to request corrections to transcription errors. Just before we go to a quick break, I'd just like to welcome Collie Shire Council President, Councillor Ian Miffling, and also the Deputy Shire President, Councillor Joe Italiano. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much.
And the state member also, Jodie Hines is here as well. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you, Jodie. If we could have a quick break from now and suspend hearing until 2:45. Thank you. Broadcasting's good. Mr O'Brien, Deputy Chair. Anyway, I will reopen this public hearing of the Select Committee on Nuclear Energy for inquiry into nuclear power generation in Australia.
Excuse me, can we have some quiet, please? Thank you.
I now welcome the Electrical Trades Union WA branch, Australian Manufacturing Workers Union WA branch to give evidence today. For the Hansard record, would you please state your name and capacity in which you appear before the committee? Thank you.
Daniel Graham. I'm here as a delegate for the AMW.
Thank you.
Steve McCartney, State Secretary of the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union.
Thank you.
Simon Brzovnik, Organiser for the Kwinana and South West area of WA.
Thank you. This hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Before I invite you to make a brief opening statement and we proceed to discussions, would you please state if you're a current or former member of a political party or a union or an investor in the renewable or nuclear industries, please?
Yep, I'm a member of the AMW.
I'm a member of the AMW and a member of the ALP.
I'm a member of the ETU and a member of the ALP.
Thank you. I now invite you to make a brief opening statement before we head on to discussions.
Thank you. I appreciate getting the opportunity to speak today because we've been, this is a long journey so far in the Southwest. I remember when I first come down here to have a discussion about renewable energy and green manufacturing, it was in 2007 when Kevin Rudd was saying we need greenfield manufacturing in brownfield areas so that we could ensure that there was more jobs for the future when and if it changed. Back in those days, half the people in this table were climate deniers, and we weren't. We understood what was going on, and we wanted to make sure that we had the discussion with our members. Now, that was a meeting in the town hall here, and to be perfectly honest, it wasn't my best meeting I ever had. I got told there was 150 years of coal left in the ground, that we shouldn't be thinking of anything else but coal. That's what started the conversation. That was in 2007. And we've been having this conversation for quite a while now. And it reached a head when we got told that the government was thinking about moving the Muja power station and shutting it down. We had more town meetings after that. So this is what I like about this transition from coal. It's not like every other transition from coal. It wasn't a top-down approach, it was a bottom-up approach. The people in town, we had meetings in town, started off with just our members, and then more and more people turned up. And, all that's on record, it was in the West Australian, etc. And we had those discussions about what we need to do in a transition, to the point when our Premier at the time come up here and come down to here and said, this is, we're going to be shutting Muja, rah. It wasn't about how much coal was in the hill. It was actually about what are the jobs, how quick is it going to be, and are we going to get educated? I think if you go and look through the town, talk to the people in the Shire Council or the local people here, you'll know that that's been dealt with. We've got an opportunity to get educated to go forward. We've got if you want to get a job here in the future, you have to go to the TAFE and they'll get you into a job. We've got positions in play that look after workers when they become under retirement, when those jobs fall away in the end. And what we're fighting tooth and nail to make sure and get through the government process is to make sure that we have startups around about the same time as we have closed downs. And that will give us the successful transition we got. I'm here today to talk against this because we know that by the time this idea goes forward in any real way, we'd already missed the opportunity to do green steel. We've already missed the opportunity to have green manufacturing off the back of it, because 20 years in the future, it won't be there, and we'll be that far behind. At the moment, the world is accumulating already. First world Europe, all around the place, is already going green. They already know that green manufacturing is their future. If we wait around for another 20 years for that to happen, we won't have manufacturing in this country.
Thank you, Steve. Simon?
Okay, I thought I'd just start off with, prior to joining the ETU. I've got over 2 decades of employment history working in coal-fired power stations, oil-fired power stations going back even further, gas-fired generators, diesel, for all your big, tier 1 mining asset, energy-intensive mining operations. And look, the risk is, like Steve was saying, that nuclear is going to delay the transition that's undergoing right now. We have put a lot of effort into working with the state government, the federal government and unions and workers to try and get training in place for a transition into the new future. The LNP's nuclear fantasy deliberately creates policy uncertainty, sowing chaos and putting projects on ice today. The last thing Australia needs is more energy uncertainty after the previous decade of Abbott, Turnbull and Morrison's deliberate and purposeful delays to renewables, which dried up investment in new generation, drove up energy costs. The LNP's nuclear fantasy will destroy thousands of jobs and lead to major energy shortages because nuclear is too slow and the taxpayers and power users will pay the bill for decades. The ETU has been working hard with other unions, businesses, state and federal governments and local industries and a plan to transition out of Collie out of coal. The Collie Just Transition Plan means members will be supported to retrain so they can participate in new job opportunities that are flowing on from renewable energy transformation in Collie and in the regions or into retirement. ETU members are getting jobs today on major renewable energy projects. With many more in the pipeline, renewables and grid-scale batteries will create jobs for thousands of additional workers each year. Asionia's Bellwether Wind Farm is to be built out the back of Collie. It starts in 2028. It will deliver 3 gigawatts of wind power. This will provide 400 long-term construction jobs and over 100 full-time jobs during the project's initial 30 years. The project will provide drought-resistant income to farmers, support local towns and business opportunities. Additionally, the project would be able to provide power to existing businesses seeking to decarbonise their operations. A 3.2 gigawatt offshore wind project is proposed off the Bunbury coast. It is planned to commence by 2030 with thousands of construction jobs, over 200 permanent jobs when in operation. The proponent of this project will also be using local companies to manufacture turbine components, further value adding to Australia and the local economy. A Dutton-led LNP has already said they will end offshore wind, right? Full stop. The Collie Green Steel project is slated to start construction next year. It will use renewable energy to create green steel products for the Australian market. This will bring construction jobs and, once completed, permanent ongoing jobs for Collie residents. BHP and Woodside have got a partnership to build a massive green hydrogen plant in the Kwinana industrial strip. They've got the land, they're ready to go. The only thing that's holding them back, there isn't enough renewable energy. You can't make green hydrogen if you don't have green energy. South 32, Worsley Alumina and Alcoa are both wanting to decarbonise. They can only do that with cheap renewable energy. The LNP to date have not released any detail on how a nuclear reactor of any design could safely operate in Collie. There is one glaring, inescapable technical problem: the lack of water. The southwest of WA has had a year-on-year declining average rainfall for decades, and this trend is continuing and accelerating. The reduction in rainfall forced local alumina producer South 32 to construct a pipeline from Wellington Dam to the refinery so refinery operations could be maintained. Prior to that, all their water fell in their catchment and filled their own freshwater lake. Serious questions remain around water consumption and waste storage. Cooling water is critical to the safe operation of a nuclear reactor, and if the worst should happen, as it has before, water will be the only way to prevent a catastrophic failure of a reactor core. A 1 gigawatt nuclear reactor consumes nearly 100 times more power than the same size coal-fired power station. The same 1 gigawatt reactor would require 27 tonnes of enriched uranium fuel per year, and that needs to be stored long term. Will the radioactive waste be stored on the proposed site in Collie? If not, where in Western Australia will this waste go and how will it be transported? Which regional town will become the toxic dumping ground of Dutton's nuclear fantasy? In conclusion, nuclear delivers Too little, too late, and is far too expensive and carries a lot of risk. The risk is not only environmental but economical. With global energy demand expected to double by 2050, Australia has the opportunity to become a major renewable energy exporter, exporting clean renewable energy as either hydrogen, ammonia, or through undersea cables directly into Asia. Australia is blessed with everything it needs to become a renewable energy superpower if we choose to do so.
Thank you, Simon. We'll start with you, Mr. O'Brien.
I'll defer to Mr. Kennedy to get started. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Is it
Brezovnik?
Brezovnik. Sorry, Mr. Brezovnik.
That's all right.
In the ETU submission, it says nuclear is going to drive up power bills. Can you explain? Can you tell the committee which analysis you're relying on for that conclusion?
I'm sorry, I can't tell you which analysis. I didn't write the report.
Or who did write the ETU's report?
I don't know.
So you're from the electrical trades
I'm from the
union
WA
today,
branch,
the WA
union,
branch,
and I'm an organiser, right? So I deal with people on the ground.
Okay, so we don't know who wrote their submission.
Just let me in here. We have the submission from the previous time the ETU spoke to us when Mr. Murphy spoke with us. That submission he spoke about, he tabled that, I'm pretty sure. Is that right, Deputy? Is that right, Secretariat?
I'll have to check that.
Yeah, all right. If we could check that, but I'm pretty sure it was tabled, that submission.
Yeah, no, I'm referring to the submission where they're saying nuclear. I've got their submission in front of me.
Yeah, but their actual where they got those figures from is tabled.
I haven't seen it. I've not seen that and I'm not aware of that. It's concerning for me you're not familiar with the ETU submission nor where the analysis comes from, but we'll move on. Are you supportive of, I take from your evidence, you're supportive of the Labor Party's plan to decarbonise?
I am supportive of the push to decarbonise, yes. It is, you know, you look at the state of the world and the state of the planet and the health of the planet. We can't continue destroying our planet the way we are. We do need to change.
But you're not supportive of the Coalition's nuclear, but you are supportive of Labor's ISP step change scenarios. Do I take that as correct?
Yes, I'm not supportive. I can't support anything the Coalition has put forward because we don't actually know. At the moment...
Okay. No, but my question is on the Labor Party submission. So on Thursday in Sydney, we heard from Sol Griffith, who was the Chief Scientist of Rewiring America. He's also been appointed by this government as the Chair of Rewiring Australia. You were just talking about hydrogen and how much you think we're going to rely on it, green hydrogen, green steel. He gave evidence on Thursday in Sydney that he believes hydrogen will never be economic.
I'll correct you right there. I never said that we'd be relying on hydrogen. What I said is that we could export energy as hydrogen or as ammonia, and if you know what ammonia is, NH3, it's 3 hydrogen atoms and 1 nitrogen.
Sure.
It's easy to export. It's no different to LNG, right? You're getting some form of energy and exporting it somewhere else, or we export electricity.
Yeah, we heard evidence from Sol Griffith that unless we can make hydrogen, whether we're exporting it or using it locally, for below $2 a kilo, it won't be economic, and in his view, that would never be economic. I asked his view about the ISP, Labor's plan, relying on hydrogen in the outer years. He said that won't happen. Why do you have a different view from Mr. Griffith? And if you do agree with him, what should we be doing to supplement green hydrogen?
I don't see green hydrogen personally, right? Personally, I don't see that as like, you're not going to be driving green hydrogen cars, I don't believe. But I do see there is a possibility that green hydrogen could be exported overseas for an end user to then turn that into another form of energy.
We just heard it wasn't going to be economic. Is there specific analysis you're relying on that you would contradict Mr. Griffith's evidence we heard last Thursday?
No, there isn't.
No, okay. Well, if we take Mr. Griffith's evidence, because I haven't heard different evidence on that in the committee yet either, what should we be looking at substituting if we are worried about some of that long-term, and we are worried about gas too. If you're worried about decarbonisation, gas is of course not carbon-free. Why wouldn't we look at safe nuclear? Look to see if nuclear could be safe to supplement that.
Well, the first thing I'll bring you back to, right, is your proposal for Collie SMRs. They don't exist. There isn't actually a single commercially viable SMR reactor on the market today. That's what you've proposed for Collie, right, and South Australia. And in your own modelling, that was never included. That was deliberately excluded from the modelling you released a couple of days ago. So I'm only here to talk about Collie and WA, and all that's proposed at the moment for WA is an SMR reactor. Let's say, what's that, 350 megawatt, 400 megawatt? That is only a drop in the ocean of the power that Western Australia needs. It is a ridiculous amount of money for very little energy output. It makes no sense for Western Australia. And as you've heard, not only briefly from what I led in my intro speech and to the other panellists, there is a major water issue in the southwest. How will you operate a nuclear reactor in the southwest?
So are you aware, we've had a Stanford study from 2017 tabled where it's saying on average a nuclear reactor uses as much water as a coal-fired power station? Are you aware of that study that the committees? Yeah, so we have had that
even still,
study tabled.
Even still, right? Blue Waters, coal-fired power station here in Collie. That's the only privately owned one. They have 2 units, 220 megawatts each, I'd say. At the end of last summer, they had to drop load by 20% because they were running out of water. Now remember, if the coal-fired power station runs out of water, you just turn it off and you're eating dinner by candlelight, right? But if a nuclear reactor runs out of water, you can't just turn it off. You've got to keep, the core retains heat. You need to keep water going in there. You need to keep cooling it. It's not just turn it off and you walk away.
Are you aware there's now technology that has dry cooling in nuclear reactors?
And none of it is commercially available today, right? These are all...
Are you saying green hydrogen is commercially available today?
We have been making hydrogen for a long time. We know how to make green hydrogen.
Where is green hydrogen commercially being made today?
Well, let's take the green out of hydrogen, right?
Where is green hydrogen being commercially made today, is my question.
What I'm getting... let me try and say, like, hydrogen, we can make hydrogen right now. There's 2 ways to make it, and we know the technology exists, right? You either get the dirty way, which I used to work in a plant in the nickel industry where we made hydrogen. You get coal seam gas unodorised, and you strip the carbon atom off it through a reformer, and you get hydrogen, and you pump the CO2 straight up the state. That's the dirty way.
I guess my...
Right, just hold on.
Can I just jump in here, please? Can we bring this back to the nuclear debate? Not
Sure.
a hydrogen debate.
No, but the question is, if we're relying in the ISP on a huge amount of green hydrogen coming in that's uncommercial, and what I'm getting to is why wouldn't we be looking at all technologies on the table? If we're worried about decarbonisation, we're worried about gas. I'm being a little bit facetious, but if we have technologies that aren't viable, why would we not look at a balanced mix, particularly when we've heard evidence that actually from the US DOE, 77% of people can transition from coal to nuclear. We've heard those jobs are 14% more, 50% more than solar. Why wouldn't we be looking at that when we understand there's threats to some of these? So why wouldn't we be looking at a balanced technology mix to keep all options on the table, particularly when they're higher paid jobs, particularly when there's opportunities to transition? Why would we not be looking at that when you can't name a single commercial green hydrogen plant?
Okay, I'll answer that by saying that we can have renewable energy. We don't need hydrogen. Hydrogen is a byproduct, another industry that could potentially flow on from renewable energy, right? And renewable energy exists now. We can deploy it very quickly, and it solves our immediate energy needs. Nuclear does not exist, like the stuff you're talking about. It's not commercially viable. It brings him back to a movie that Keanu Reeves starred in 1995, Chain Reaction, I think it was, right? Nuclear fission's been around the corner. It's every 10 years it's going to happen, right? So in another 10 years it might be here. In another 10 years, well, we've got a problem right now where we need to solve our climate emergency and energy needs, and these sort of nuclear reactors are not going to solve it.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Burnell.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for all coming along to provide evidence today. I want to take you to the Coalition's nuclear policy that they dropped in on the 19th of June earlier this year. So it's been 7 months, just shy of 7 months since the announcement on Friday, of all dates, the 13th. Must be something in that.
My birthday's on the 13th.
But what I want to get to is, it's been 7 months. Collie's been slated for a small modular reactor. It clearly states in here on page 3 that the Muja power station, Western Australia, SMR only. I think we heard on the previous panel, the panel before, the Shadow Minister said, oh, there's no technology being decided on at this point. My question is to the whole panel here. It's been 7 months. There was an announcement on Friday. Were you expecting to have more detail announced by the Shadow Minister and the Leader of the Opposition regarding plans for Collie, what type of reactor you were going to get, the length of time for the build, when it was going to come on and provide power to the grid? Where was your expectations about that announcement on Friday?
Oh, I think that announcement was some more fairy floss, to be perfectly honest. I think that we're talking about January. We get told, by the way, we're going to have a nuclear power station here. We've heard little or nothing since. A couple of town meetings, I think, around the place. One had 50 people in it. The other had less, is my understanding. I think that this is like trying to fast-track something. You know what I mean? That isn't actually can be fast-tracked. So we're talking about it now. It's coming up to an election soon. All we have to do is keep talking about it, then people might vote for it, right? But at the other end of it, I'm sure that's when they'll start working it out. And we've got no confidence in that. I did a tour a long time ago up the centre of Northern Territory and went to every one of those mines, right, where the life expectancy for Aboriginals is 48, etc., right? The amount of water that leached into the pool at Jabiru, right, it's documented, right, is dangerous, right? Every step of it. It's a bit like, a long time ago our union went to all sorts of lengths to try and stop asbestos because it was dangerous to dig up, it was dangerous to travel, and it was dangerous when it wore out. And I've got a feeling that nuclear power is exactly the same. When nuclear power goes bang, people get killed and you never go back. Ask the people at Chernobyl. Are they back there living there? No. Right? Do you want anything to go wrong here, to this pristine environment now, with people that have lived here for 100 odd years? And what do you say then? I'm sorry, it's not my fault. Blame the manufacturer. I think it's terrible.
Look, I think, first of all, Ted's comment earlier to another panel that, the coalition isn't picking anything. Well, you are, because you're deciding to blow $300+ billion of taxpayers' money on a technology, nuclear. I haven't seen the coalition go, well, we're going to invest $300 billion in renewable energy, right? And the question's got to be asked, and you've got to be honest with Australian, why are you doing that? It's not because you want to keep the lights on. You just want to delay the rollout of renewables, keep coal burning longer, and put our future at risk. I don't actually think you genuinely care about the environment. That's my feeling. And look, I can tell you, my kids, they suffer anxiety because they're going, why should I bother going to uni and doing this? You guys have already trashed the planet. I can't buy a house. What kind of future will I have? We've got a problem to solve now, and nuclear is not the solution. It's too slow.
Thank you. Have you got anything else to add, Mr. Graham?
Thank you. So from myself, I guess being the local, I am the local here. My journey doesn't go back as far as 2007. I was working at Muja Power Station then, but I had head in sand. 2020 it became real, closures, change. Don't know much about nuclear, so I'm not going to pretend I do, but I do know we need to change. We need to go cleaner. We need to, leave this earth to our children's children, better place. The thing for me, and in my role at Muja now, I'm the contractor transition coordinator, so I'm tasked with looking after Collie Power Station, Muja, all the contractors there, and helping them transition. And when we talk about their futures, when I had that conversation with them, the biggest concern for them is the timing. It's like, hey, I've got a closure date here. I've been told I'm finishing, but what am I going to? What am I going to? And looking at the nuclear timeline, I'm just not sure how that matches up and how that's going to help Collie. I think we need to be looking at new industry, manufacturing. We're good at doing it in Collie. We're good at getting our hands dirty. We're good at making stuff, and we're pretty happy to take it on board if it's going to come to us. But we've got a couple on the hook. We just need to get them over the line. But timing is everything, because if we don't get the timing right, people are going to go. The town's going to suffer. And I just want this town to continue the way it is.
Can I just briefly add to that question, right? Michaela Cash came out a little while ago and said there won't be a nuclear reactor built in WA until at least 2050. Right? That's just ridiculous. We don't have that kind of time, right? That's one of your own political party members.
Senior ones.
What's that?
A senior one.
Yeah, a senior one, correct. And at least she's from WA, I suppose. But, yeah, it's... But look, what have you got to say? Is she wrong? Is she incorrect in coming out and saying that?
Final question, Mr. Bennell.
And thank you for that. I want to go to these town meetings. There's been a lot of discussion about these, and I think there's a bit of conflicting information. What I would like to know is, have these town meetings, have they been open forums or closed forums? And has there been a community-wide invitation where any member of the public can turn up and have their thoughts heard and express their concerns or get more detail on the...
Our first meeting was purely members, right? Then we asked them to go back to their social clubs, their footy clubs, everything, right? And we put a broad scope to everybody.
So this is in relation to these nuclear town hall meetings that have been held?
Oh, no, well, no one went. Only 50 people went to them.
But was that an open forum that was opened up to the entire community, or seeing a lot of heads not shaking here, saying no?
What I'll do is I'll answer that question for you, right? So, maybe some people like to scroll TikTok, read a book. I enjoy getting into Facebook groups, and I'm a bit of a political tragic, so I follow their political pages, and I follow other Liberal ones as well because I like to know what they're up to. And I saw a little thing come up saying Peter Dutton's company Collie, they're having a public consultation. I thought, sweet, I might go to this. And then when I went on the website and looked, I had to pre-register. I had to register the questions I was going to ask. I wasn't allowed to ask any questions without notice. It was very scripted. And I didn't end up going, right? So what's the point? It's so controlled, and it wasn't open to the public. It was literally you had to register and be given permission to attend. That was very disappointing because I was looking forward to being able to ask Peter Dutton some questions.
So ticking boxes, but portraying something different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bennell. Mr. Chester.
Thanks, Chair. Just on a slightly different tack, but related to the broader question we're dealing with the inquiry, we've heard other evidence that Australia already has a small but capable nuclear industry, or part of the nuclear economy supply chain as it is, in relation to nuclear medicine, AUKUS, and helping other countries decarbonise through the export of uranium. Is it your view that those industries should continue, or are you against all forms of nuclear activity in Australia?
I'm happy to have an answer at the Lucas Heights reactor in Sydney. It's, what is it, 20 megawatt or something? It's tiny, right? And it is only for medicine or research use.
So you're not opposed to nuclear medicine?
I'm not opposed to nuclear medicine,
okay.
Right? Why would I be? Why would I be
some people are. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah. Why would I be opposed at something that's going to help people?
What's your view of AUKUS then? Is the ETU got a position on AUKUS?
My personal opinion on AUKUS, I think it is the biggest waste of money ever. What is it? $330 billion, right, that we're transferring of public wealth to America, and we may never see a sub.
That's your personal view, not the ETU's view? That's your personal view, or the ETU's view?
The ETU's view. Sorry?
I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yep. No,
it's the ETU's view or your personal view?
That's my personal view.
And in relation to the evidence we've heard that the export of uranium from Australia, we're one of the top 3 largest exporters of uranium in the world, is helping other nations decarbonise quicker. And given we're talking about a global challenge here, what's the AMWU or ETU's view about uranium exports?
Oh, the AMWU's got a straight up and down. Same as what I said before. It's dangerous to dig up. When you dig it up, when you're working there, you have to wear a monitor to make sure you don't get it affected, right? When it leaves there, you have to get the okay from every Shire council from there to the drop-off point, and every one of those has to be ticked off. I don't know why. It couldn't be because it's not dangerous.
So the AMW's position is no uranium exports from Australia?
It'd suit me, absolutely.
No, I'm just wondering if that's the position.
That's my position.
Okay. ETU?
I just want to bring you back, right, to a bit of context around here. Some countries, like Japan, for instance, as an example, nuclear makes sense. They don't have land, they don't have a lot of renewable energy potential. right? For Australia, nuclear is not the right choice. We are blessed with so much land, most of it unusable.
Thanks,
right?
thanks, Mr. President. That's what I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to
But
understand
what you're trying to do is you're trying to say that, well, these other countries are using nuclear, so we should, but you're not giving context to why they use nuclear.
No, I'm not trying to say anything. No, sorry, sir. I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just trying to understand your position, whether it's against nuclear energy in its entirety anywhere or different aspects. And so the AMWU is opposed to uranium exports, so it means it's opposed to all nuclear energy anywhere in the world. What you've suggested to me there is in other countries it does make sense.
And other countries where they do not have the opportunity or potential to produce renewable energy because they don't have land or they don't have enough sunshine, yeah, of course, you've got to look at other options, and that is nuclear. But Australia does not need nuclear energy.
So your view then is not specifically related to Collie, it's Australia in its entirety. The ETU's view is Australia in its entirety doesn't need nuclear.
The current ETU position is no to nuclear energy, yes.
Not just in Collie.
Correct.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chester. Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested in the comments made about the wind farms outside Collie and the fact that they would generate ongoing employment for quite a number of people. There's been some concern, I think, that installation of wind farms results in employment only for a short period of time, and that after that the people who install them move on and there's not many jobs in the area. Can you tell us how that works and what the ongoing workforce is engaged with?
I guess the easiest way to think about it, right, the wind farm is a rotating machine, and anything that rotates needs maintenance. So wind farms will need ongoing, mechanical maintenance and electrical maintenance for their whole life. No different to a coal-fired power station, a nuclear power station, a gas turbine or any other piece of mechanical equipment. That there will be ongoing maintenance and operational jobs.
Thank you. And I was also interested in your concerns regarding, alternate methods of energy production. And I think many people have concerns about hydrogen and whether or not it's going to be a commercially realistic alternative to other forms of renewable energy generation. Do you have any thoughts regarding any other industries or other potentials for long duration energy storage other than hydrogen? You mentioned ammonia.
So look, ammonia makes more sense to transport purely because it's safer, right? So ammonia is, NH3, so 3 hydrogen atoms and 1 nitrogen atom. So what you can do is you can produce ammonia using renewable energy, and you can transport it to the other side of the planet. You take the hydrogen away, and then you can use that. You can burn it, do whatever you need to do with hydrogen, and then the nitrogen, that's fertilizer. So that's just a safe way to transport it, whereas hydrogen's actually pretty dangerous, just like LNG or something else to transport long distance.
Yeah. Is there any local expertise in mass production of ammonia in WA?
Ammonia isn't very hard to produce. There is a new urea plant, actually, it's just commenced construction up in Karratha. The nickel industry, where I worked previously in Queensland, we produced ammonia, a lot of it, because it's used as your, sort of like in the alumina industry, they use caustic. In the nickel industry, they use ammonia, and that's what dissolves the minerals to extract it. So ammonia, people have been producing ammonia for decades and decades. It's not a new, unknown technology. It's old. It's proven. It's just energy intensive.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so it's very energy intensive. And what about, are there any specific safety concerns around its transport, acknowledging the fact that there's very significant safety concerns around transport of hydrogen?
The worst thing about ammonia, if you were to get a spill, is the smell, right? But it does dissipate. But essentially, if you were to pour ammonia on the ground, it's virtually just fertiliser. So if you where I used to work in Queensland at Queensland Nickel before Clive Palmer bought it and destroyed it, if you looked out the back of the tailing dams and everything where all the leftover waste went, for about 10 kilometres either side of that refinery, it was rainforest. It was actually unnatural because in towns it was more bushy. But because of the little bit of ammonia that was left in the tailings, it was fertilised and it was always wet. It was like a tropical bloody oasis in the middle of normal bush. So ammonia is generally pretty safe. You wouldn't want to be stuck in a confined space breathing it because obviously it'll hurt. But it's not intrinsically bad for the environment. It will dissipate.
Yeah.
Plants will use it as fertiliser. It's not a drama to clean up.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Ms. Mascarenhas.
Thank you all for being here and presenting today. I can see that there's a lot of skills and experience on your side of the table. That's not a comment on this side of the table. So one of the things that I see in this debate is I think that often WA is overlooked and there's a poor understanding of what's happening in WA. It's interesting that from what's been proposed, it's SMR, small modular reactors that aren't commercially available, but there was economic analysis that was released last Friday by Frontier Economics, but that's for the national electricity market. And I think that some people think the national electricity market includes WA, but I know that we in this room know that it does not. And so it's a continuation of ignoring what's happening in WA. I also know that there's been so many years of work of what's been going into Collie's just transition, and I see it as an amazing story that needs to be shared across the country. And so my question is do you think that this is a genuine process of looking at what is the future for Collie, or is it just a ploy for distraction and delay of renewables, but also what's some of the great work that's happening here in the southwest?
The great work that's happening here is there's been a lot of consultation with the whole public of the place. Everyone knows where we're heading, right? I think that was the most valuable bit. The community consultation was really important. We didn't leave doors locked and say you have to give us a series of questions before you come in. Everyone come down to the Oval, and it was raw, and it was a lot of letting of emotions when you know things are going to close. And about the third meeting, it started to get back to what are the practical answers. And what we were looking for, we weren't looking for politicians. What we wanted to do is make sure we had a way forward for the town, so when the politicians arrive, we could tell them what we wanted. And that's why I think that's the power in this transition. This transition it's people power. People inside of Collie have gone out in the streets and said, yes, we want this. We want this to happen now, right? And first of all, it was no, no, no. We don't want change. No one likes change like this. But one thing I can be sure of is that when those green energy jobs do take off here, they wanted jobs that created jobs for their kids. So the first step in this transition is those jobs that look after the people that are coming off the mine. The downstream green manufacturing jobs are ready and willing and able to be the next step for the youth of Collie and the southwest. It's a transition, when you think about it, it's not just a transition of Collie's power. It's a transition of how the southwest's economy works. And that's why it's such a big piece. And it's taken quite a long time to do it. And to have disruption in the middle of this, all it really does is make investors concerned about where they put their money, right? Then they're never going to have a nuclear power station in Collie. They just want votes in Collie.
I'm also interested to understand kind of the electricity producers around Collie at the moment. And so could you give me a back of the envelope estimate as to all the coal-fired power stations, what their power is, but also can you remind me the size of the large renewable wind project that's happening in the back of Collie, but also the offshore project as well?
Yeah, so I'll just be estimating here, but let's say it'll be 2 gigawatt, maybe a little under, of coal capacity in Collie. The wind farm that's going in the back of Collie starting 2028 is 3 gigawatt, and the offshore wind farm that's proposed, we're pretty confident that it will go ahead if, you know, the political landscape doesn't change. It's 3.2 gigawatt, but that's of a possible 11 gigawatt that's in that, you know, envelope that could go in there. So technically, if those two wind farms are built today, they would be able to power half of WA right now. You know, so a nuclear reactor that is, you know, slated to get built sometime between, let's say, now and 2050, more likely towards 2050, and only produce, let's say, an SMR, a maximum of 500 megawatts. It's only a fraction of the generating capacity.
Thank you, Ms. Mascarenas. Dr. Molino.
Oh, thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much for your evidence. I joined partway through, so apologies if some of my questions double up on anything that's already been discussed. But I just wanted to ask about some of the issues with decommissioning both power stations and mines. And you know, one of the reasons why the coalition has a policy structured around putting nuclear power plants at the end of existing transmission lines is that it will purportedly save on transmission lines. But one of the complications, of course, is that if you have huge plants and huge mines there, the decommissioning can be extremely complicated and take a long time. I'm just wondering if there are any issues around that are likely to surface. You want to answer?
We have a bit of a plan for the decommissioning of Collie, and we've had a discussion about it. There's going to be X amount of people in Collie that have got a good set of skills that aren't quite ready to retire yet. And we see those people working in that space about the land reclamation and getting that sorted out. What we really want to make sure of is that their children get the training that they do need for the industries that turn up. Now, mine reclamation at the end won't have too much of an impact on the amount of people who are going to go to the new industries, because they're quite comfortable operating machinery until they knock off, right? And there's going to be a fair bit of work involved in that, making it happen. So I think there's half a generation of work there, like to get that finished and turned back into the facility it should be. I think that those people that are going into retirement see this as their opportunity to get a bit of work at the end, and pave the way for their children and their children's children to do that work in the future.
Just to jump on the back of that, Steve, some of the work that I've discussed along the way is about mapping our people, where they are, where they want to be in the timeline. Myself, come 2029, Muja closes, I've still got to work, unfortunately, and I need 15, 20 years work. There's highly skilled people there that are probably going to struggle to get into new industries that are going to have that timeline of ongoing work for 20, 30 years. But they might just want to work for 5 years, and that might be what it takes to decommission a plant. So that's why it's so critical to get the timeline right and the mapping of the people into the right positions. And we need to start that now. That needs to be happening.
Thank you, Dr. Molino. I've just got a couple of quick questions before we end. The stated Liberals' energy plan is one where baseload nuclear power, which they say will operate with a 90% capacity factor, supports renewables. As someone who represents workers in a coal-fired power station, Stephen, who's experienced a role of baseload power and as well as renewables, can you explain whether you think the renewables and nuclear are compatible, and whether a renewables heavy grid, noting the Libs want 54% renewables, can effectively be supported by baseload nuclear power? That's to you, yeah.
Yep, it's incompatible. Nuclear power stations have the exact same problem as coal generators, right? They are commissioned and designed to run at 80+%. That's their most efficient window. Once, say, a coal-fired plant starts dropping down, you increase wear, valve wear, maintenance costs go up, they become unstable, they trip. So this is the problem we have at the moment, is we're getting more renewables in there, and especially in Western Australia, we get on cool days, we get so much solar energy coming into the grid that the coal-fired generators become unstable. They ramp down, and we have issues of them tripping off, or they can't, or they just got to turn off. And the worst thing you can do for a coal-fired power station is turn it on and off, up and down. They're literally designed to be turned on and left. And nuclear, I'm not a nuclear physicist, but my understanding is They designed in a similar fashion where they're designed to run at a certain output, and below that they're unstable and hard to keep operating. So with a 70%, 80%, 90% renewable energy, it just doesn't make sense. So what you'll end up doing is, to run that nuclear power plant at full load or 90%, you're going to have to limit renewable energy input. So you'll be turning off wind or turning off rooftop solar, so that you can keep that model. That'll drive the cost of energy up, because you're now filling the market with the most expensive form of energy production and turning off the cheapest. That's the problem with nuclear.
Just following on from that, an SMR is spoken about for this area. The SMR manufacturers say that they can be ramped up and down. Do you know anything more on that?
Again, I'll go back to, there isn't a single commercially available design out there, so they can say whatever they want. But there isn't actually any engineering, anything available where you can go, well, I can take that off the shelf and build it, and it's proven. It's all a fantasy at the moment. I did read something, I can't remember if it was, was it Rolls-Royce? So it's one of the American companies where they've only got 2 engineers left working on their SMR design, and they went to the American government and said, we want you to fund it. And because the actual company said it's not worth us having our own engineers in there doing the engineering, because we know it's not viable. Without taxpayer support, SMRs will never, ever get off the ground.
Thank you. Just one final question. Do you think it's acceptable that the Coalition are giving workers here false hope that they can walk into a nuclear job?
I think it's a disgrace. I think it's actually disruptive. It's taking away people that are sitting on the edge of investment here, now wondering if they're going to be mucked around for the next 10 years while people talk about something that doesn't exist. And what that will do is start making investment more difficult and actually helping to ruin the transition. Because when those investors walk away, then we've got no support.
Yeah, and when I look at members and just employees working up at the coal-fired power station, most of them will either be retired or no longer with us by the time a nuclear reactor is built. That they won't see a job out of it. So it's false hope. If they're thinking that in 3 or 4 years' time there's going to be magically this SMR is just going to appear out of nowhere, it's not going to happen.
Do you just want to add to that, Daniel? Because you do live here, so.
Yeah, thanks. Look, and again, I just go back to the timeline. That's the biggest conversation we have with our members, is that they are worried about the timeline and having those good paying, union agreement jobs to go to on the closures. And that's just constantly, it's a conversation. I could do all I can in my role to help them transition by providing training and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, the same question keeps coming to me, is what are we transitioning to?
Thank you for your time today, guys. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, including questions on notice, please forward it to the Secretariat by Friday the 10th of January 2025. Please note that responses to questions on notice will be published on the website as submissions to the inquiry. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to assist you with answering questions taken on notice today, and you'll have an opportunity to request corrections to transcription errors. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Cheers.
I now welcome, forgive me on names here, but Miss Davies, Mr. Gulley, Miss Conochie, thank you, and Miss Wendy Tapscott. All right. We'll just start with you guys, and we'll get, for the Hansard record, would you please state your name and capacity in which you appear before the committee, and we'll start with you, Ms. Davies.
Oh, thank you. Nicole Davies. I appear in my personal capacity.
Thank you.
Rob Gulley, personal capacity.
Wendy Tapscott, personal capacity.
Thank you. This hearing is a legal proceeding of the Parliament. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Before I invite you to make a brief opening statement, then we proceed to discussions. Would you please state if you're a current or former member of a political party or a union or an investor in the renewables or nuclear industries, please? Start with you, Mr.
I recently joined after finding their position in offshore wind, the Liberal Party in the Busselton branch, and not investments or a union.
Thank you. Mr. Gulley?
I'm not a member of any political party.
Yeah. So could you just state your name for the Hansard record?
Me?
Yeah, you, sorry.
I'm Brenda Conochie, and I am a member of the Greens. I've also been a member of the ALP in the past, and I'm a former member of the Teachers' Union.
Thank you, Ms. Conochie.
I'm a local. I don't belong to any political party.
No worries, thank you. I now invite you to all make a brief opening statement. If we could just keep it brief so we can get to questions, that would be great. We'll start with you, Ms. Davies.
Okay. I'm speaking today in my personal capacity and as a resident of the Geograph Bay area. My research into the proposed Bunbury offshore wind zone has led me to consider the broader implications to our local marine ecosystem, economic considerations and social licence issues. Through asking the question, what other options do we have, a significant part of this research included discussions with nuclear energy experts, leading me to conclude that if climate change is our primary concern, then nuclear energy must be part of the conversation. But in order to do that in an unbiased manner, the moratorium on nuclear must be lifted. I guess there are three key points that I just wanted to make today, and the first is that the current pathway for a renewables-only energy system in WA, reliant on large-scale intermittent wind and solar, firmed by batteries and backed by peaking gas, does not represent a viable long-term economic solution for our state's energy needs. Secondly, the significant differences between the WA's wholesale electricity market and the national electricity market, that must be acknowledged. And thirdly, energy security cannot be addressed in silos. It requires a holistic approach that considers the broader system impacts. We need to remove the bias and have an honest discussion, and I appreciate the opportunity that you are providing to do this in this forum today. Firstly, the current pathway for renewables only and the arguments against nuclear fail to acknowledge the differences of the cost of electricity generation, the price of electricity and the value of electricity to consumers, including households and industry. They are often used interchangeably, but are very different. The cost of generation may be more for nuclear than for renewables because of a higher capital cost, but the long-term viability is spread over and reliability is spread over a longer period of time. In the life of a nuclear plant, the wind and solar and batteries required in the lifetime of a nuclear plant, the wind, solar and batteries could require replacement or refurbishment, depending on the technology, between 2 to 8 times. The price of electricity that generators charge retailers is often reflective of generation costs with renewables, but it also is subject to market mechanisms, and the price we are paying through our bills is made up of generation costs of about, I think it's somewhere between 35% or something like that, and transmission distribution costs, which is about 44%, and the remainder of costs are made up of profit margins, system costs, levies, regulatory and environmental costs. And this is where the hidden costs of the renewable-only policy can impact consumers, potentially in the short and longer term. The value of electricity goes beyond the mere cost or price to consider economic, environmental and the systemic benefits of reliable, always-on energy. In WA, with a resource-heavy industry, the value is significant. And if you can consider the impact of the Varanus Island gas explosion, which reduced the gas supply to WA by just 30% for a relatively short period, this was said to have a cost of $3 billion to the economy. The value of reliable energy supply is monetary, but also immeasurable in terms of energy security, being akin to national security. And it's this impact to things like our hospitals and traffic lights, etc. I do have a detailed analogy. I know you're up for time, but I just wanted to give you a shortened version for this. And it's a bit like the Three Little Pigs houses, in that while wind and solar are like the house of straw, they are quicker and cheaper to build, but are unreliable without support. Batteries are like a house of sticks, offering temporary firmness, but they are not long enough duration. And gas and coal resemble the house of bricks, providing stable but more costly energy, and nuclear could be considered perhaps a fortress and a replacement for coal, offering long-term, reliable and low-carbon energy solutions. It takes a village, and what we need is a balanced mix of technologies to provide reliable energy security and distribute the risk of supply chain or infrastructure failure in any one generation source. WA's energy system is fundamentally different from the NEM. Unlike the eastern states, WA is isolated and lacks interconnections to other states for support. We also have no large-scale storage infrastructure like hydro, and projects such as the Snowy 2.0 are not on the horizon. Our gas supply is reliant on a single source, to the Dampier to Bunbury natural gas pipeline, which has experienced disruptions in the past, and it's reasonable to foresee that there are potential risks to this supply, whether they be operational or incidents or sabotage. And I acknowledge there are significant mitigation measures taken by the asset owner and regulatory bodies to eliminate this, just like there are in the nuclear industry following the significant impacts that they've had. The current trajectory risks making WA's energy system resemble South Australia, but without the benefit of the interconnection to Victoria for backup. At present, Collie serves as WA's primary backup for reliable baseload power. However, the plans to retire the coal facilities prematurely before establishing an equivalent reliable dispatchable power source could leave WA vulnerable to energy security risks. Thirdly, the issue of energy security is often addressed in silos. What kind of grid and infrastructure and transmission planning do we need? What energy storage do we need? What demand management policies do we need? How much capacity do we need? When do we close the coal plants? And all these questions have merit and ongoing state energy bodies and policies that aim to address them. It is crucial to take a broader long-term view, and that this includes considering the opportunity cost of not lifting the moratorium on nuclear energy. Currently, offshore wind is a focus for the federal government, and following the declaration of the Bunbury area as a potential offshore wind zone, the feasibility licence application deadline has been extended multiple times, from the 11th of November by a month and now to the end of January. To date, no applications have been received. This may reflect the challenges facing the global offshore wind industry, and I can go through those if you want me to, but not for time.
We are a little bit.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
There's other people that have still got to speak as well.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Regarding coal generation, the lack of definitive closure timelines has resulted in extending the operating conditions that the plants are operated under, and they are often operated under the design that they're supposed to. So, like was mentioned previously before, they are not designed to be ramped up and down. They're supposed to be baseload power. This leads to increased wear and tear and higher maintenance costs and challenges in scheduling planned outages during periods of high demand and destabilised workforce. While coal is often criticised for its environmental impact, there is a risk of taking its availability for granted as we transition to alternative energy solutions. Without clear plans for reliable replacement capacity, coal plants remain a critical component of our energy mix. Because of time, I won't finish what I have to say, but I just think there's other questions that you need to ask, and that's like, if we're saying no to nuclear energy, it's compared to what and at what cost, and what is the hard evidence against it. And I've been listening a lot to the debate around nuclear energy, and a lot of the arguments against nuclear are based in the extremes, and they're founded on fear and demagoguery, and we really need to take a look at it rationally, without bias, and look at the full system costs and other related impacts in order to make decisions.
Thank you, Ms Davies. If you like, you could table that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's no issues at all, yeah.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah. Mr Gulley?
I'm told this is a bit weird and boring, but I would like to speak about governance.
If we can just try and keep it limited to time, that's all.
Governance broadly construed in relation to this nuclear power proposal. Governance being a system of processes, institutions and practices that are used to make decisions and regulate issues of common concern, and the mechanisms that hold an organisation and its people to account. I note that the committee has asked us to indicate our presumed biases or conflicts of interest by stating our associations with political parties or the nuclear or renewables industries. On the face of it, this may seem like an entirely reasonable thing to do and might suggest a good governance approach. Are there biases in this evidence? So, given my governance interest, I point out to you that the committee has not asked us to identify any interest we might have in the existing fossil industry. for it appears to me that the most immediate beneficiary of this inquiry is the existing fossil fuel industry, a benefit that they gain by destabilising investment in renewable technologies. It would seem, therefore, that this bias not being considered when precisely for decision-making integrity and faith it must be considered. It would be absolutely fundamental to include a specific identification of this kickback pathway and this declaration of interests by everybody, including committee members, who appear at these hearings. If we were asked our affiliations, then we should expect that every committee member reveal their affiliations. Every meeting, every conversation they've had with fossil, nuclear, renewables, bioenergy, network, thermal storage, whatever, for this, and by this will the public to at least understand how you are being influenced by sponsorship, graft or expectations of post-politics employment in the nuclear industry after you've, and similar to the Western Australian model in that regard. What level of trust should the public have in you if you don't reveal all this information for simple public transparency? Remember, this is about governance, and industry lobbyists meet elected officials regularly in ways that the general public cannot and cannot see, and politicians can be influenced in unknown ways. And so there, at the very outset, this institution of the Australian government, this committee, that should be held in high trust and confidence by the public, have failed, either deliberately or by ignorance, to recognise fundamental threats to the likely integrity of information presented by participants, including material that is presented by the committee itself. When it comes to nuclear matters, Australians should have very high level of trust in our government. We should. But right here, in this alone, the rational basis of that trust should be questioned. The financial benefits that you receive as parties and potentially as individuals from the unnamed elephant here, the fossil fuel industry, is certainly against the wider public interest. Australians will remember the thousands of deaths, and I'm sorry if this might seem extreme to you, Australians will remember the thousands of deaths that accrued while politicians and political parties accepted donations from the tobacco industry, and Australians are increasingly learning the ongoing harms of the gambling and alcohol industries. And that some of the political parties' receipt of donations from them, or they're likely directly invested in them, clearly biases this committee. It would be naive, I think, of me for me to believe that you are not being duchessed in precisely this same way by the nuclear industry, and that's not being disclosed. This has implications for governance. Did the receipt of money from the tobacco, gambling or alcohol or fossil fuel industries make for better governance? And I would say no. And this failure of governance has led directly to the deaths and hardship of thousands of Australians. If Australia is to pursue this nuclear idea, then it will be drawing on international help from the nuclear industry. So remember, this is about governance. Let's look at the governance examples from a best practice operator. In 2007, during the earthquake off the Japanese west coast, the TEPCO-operated Kashiwazaki Kiriwa nuclear power station got broken and was shut down. Okay, shit happens. In 2010, the TEPCO annual report, so 3 years after that event, in 2010, the TEPCO annual report states, going forward, as a matter of course, we will use the most sophisticated knowledge and techniques available at the time in building, maintaining and configuring nuclear power plants that are highly safe and secure in the event of natural disasters. So, world's best practice. However, we are not going to become complacent. We need to constantly remain open to new ideas. We want to share the perspective of local inhabitants in devoting all of our strengths to building nuclear power plants that are safe and secure. 2010.
That's your TEPCO report.
The TEPCO annual report, read them, there's dozens of them, they all say the same thing, we're reliable, etc.
We still got more people to speak, so we've only got another 20 minutes left.
So, in that case, what should I choose of this?
Oh, in 2011 March, you all know what happened in Fukushima. So, yeah.
The thing that I'd like to say very briefly then is that TEPCO as a world's best practice operator. They go out to the world and they say, we're good, we're good, we're good, we're full of lawyers, academics, professionals and experts. And what happens? Well, the place blows up. And thousands of people are affected by that. And but for dumb luck, and okay, I accept it might be a bit extreme, but for dumb luck, Tokyo didn't need to be evacuated. But for dumb luck. Those sorts of events were closely supervised, managed, overseen, organised, coordinated by nuclear industry experts. Every nuclear industry accident, every I dropped a bit of radioactive rubbish on the side of the road, every theft of nuclear materials, every misappropriation of nuclear materials has been overseen directly by nuclear experts. So should I, in terms of governance, should I have faith in those nuclear experts? And you've been hearing from them. They will sit here and they'll say, I'm an expert, I know about this. Every nuclear accident that's ever happened, every loss of radioactive material, every routine radiological release has been supervised directly by those people. Should I accept that? No, I do not accept that. That is definitely not a good governance approach to accept from those people their expertise when they have directly overseen every nuclear accident that's happened.
Thank you, Mr. Gulley. Miss Conochie.
Conochie. And just on
I might get it right in the next one.
And just on timing, we did start this session a bit late, so I hope we won't be squashed because of it.
These are meant to be 2 to 3 minute statements,
sure.
And both of them have been over 8 minutes so far.
Right.
So
I'll see if I can beat that.
Together, each.
Okay.
I'll cut you off.
Another bit
I'm not
of
going to be nasty, but I will cut you off if you do.
Another bit of vested interest or association is that Rob and I run a small eco-auditing business part-time, and we do market stalls giving free information voluntarily, but we do actually get paid by local government to go into people's houses, help them save electricity, gas and water, and help them with their house plans to see if they can tweak them to be better. And this is achieving a wonderful feedback and 10 to 20% savings. And we call energy efficiency, it's called internationally, if you look in the right places, the first fuel. It is the first fuel. It's the lowest hanging fruit. And I was really pleased to read that in the World Nuclear Industry Status Report, nuclear's share of global energy production was only 9.15% last year. 9% last year. It was 17% in 1996. And why that's of interest to me is that there's 10 to 20% just in households. I know industry is different and that needs different, engineers to energy audit and so on. But we've only just scratched the surface, we as a society. We've got hardly any subsidies, and your state government isn't doing much for that. $3,500 towards an EV, but no help for heat pumps to replace big old clunking hot water systems. Or to replace old air conditioning, etc.
Can we just get back to the terms of reference? We're not here to talk about the state. We're here to talk about.
Sorry.
Inquiries.
Okay, fair enough. Energy efficiency, the first fuel. So the other things I wanted to touch on, and perhaps in the questions they might come up, is that I'm opposed to nuclear power everywhere in the world, and everywhere it's been brought in, there's been dissent. We've followed with interest the No Nukes Asia Forum with the dissenting people in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, etc. There's been dissent everywhere. I'm against it anywhere. Uranium mining, start at the beginning, health effects on workers, transport risks, ghastly tailings dams up at Ranger that ERA was just going to walk away from, etc. Uranium mining, bad. Okay. Reactors, the workers, there's new information coming out about needing to make the millisieverts, level way, way lower because there's virtually no safe level of ionising radiation. And cardiovascular diseases are now included in a big British and American study of hundreds of thousands of workers with, as well as cancer tumours. So radioactive stuff for workers, contamination of environment. I believe Jackie Jarvis gave a speech, I haven't seen the text of it, about how in America farming land around nuclear power plants, they have to guarantee that they can keep all their animals inside for indefinite periods if there's contamination. Weapons along the way, there's several spots where weapons grade stuff, and I'm talking dodgy little terrorist weapons through to real proper nuclear weapons can all be got from it. Okay, Australia might decide not to.
Terms of reference, because this is not part of the terms of reference.
Well, waste is waste in the terms of reference.
Waste is in the terms of reference, but nuclear weapons aren't. So can we please get back
all right,
to the terms
fair
of
enough.
reference?
Sorry,
We're straying way off, and we are running out of time.
Waste is. I got the 55-page Frontier Economics report the other day, and I used my search tool. I thought my search tool was broken for the searching in a PDF because I looked up waste. It did not appear. No, it's not part of the equation. It's not part of the costing. Never mind what happens after the power is produced. The waste, massive problem. Serious problem. The only one that's nearing completion of long-term storage is at Onkalo, a little island off Finland, to take just finished waste. They've been delayed by another year at least. They've got one of the ways they're kind of dealing with it, having to keep it safe for hundreds of thousands of years, the waste from the nuclear reactors, is they've got to make it archaeology proof. They've got to make it look as if nothing ever happened in that spot, to be buried down below that. They've been working on it with their community and with the geologists for 40 years, and it's still not open yet. And as you all know, the American Yucca Mountain fell, that whole proposal after billions of dollars was spent. It's no good. So in the meantime, the waste is just sitting around. In America, their depleted fuel rods are kept on site in water tanks for about 5 years, moved to steel and concrete canisters called dry casks, held for another 40 years in what's known as interim storage. Only then is the material cool enough to stash underground, but that last step's never happened. In America, 85 interim storage sites hold more than 86,000 tonnes of waste. It's like leaving all your garbage in your backyard forever. So Collie, in having any sort of reactor, would be doing the same and contributing the same. All right, I'll stop.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Tapscott.
I will keep it short and sweet. I think everyone's sort of.
You can have 8 minutes too if you want. Everyone else.
That's fine. No, it's fine.
It's up to you.
I'm just an average local Collie resident. I moved here in my retirement because it was a pristine area that I love trees and want to be around. I think for the economic benefits for the region should be looked at very closely. We have a rich history of energy production in this area, and as the world moves towards cleaner energy options, the shift to nuclear power could provide significant economic benefits for this community. The transition can create new jobs in construction, operation and maintenance of nuclear facilities, thereby revitalising the local economy. Furthermore, nuclear power can attract investment, promote technological advancements, positioning Collie as a leader in the energy sector. Reusing the current coal infrastructure enables the fast and efficient implementation of nuclear options. Its environmental sustainability is clean and efficient. I'm sure there's lots of other people that see it as being dangerous. It produces minimal greenhouse gas emissions compared to fossil fuels, making it a crucial component of Australia's strategy to meet its emissions reduction targets. By investing in nuclear energy, we can significantly reduce our carbon footprint and contribute to the global efforts in combating climate change while preserving the natural beauty of the Collie region. The increasing frequency of extreme weather events and the intermittent nature of renewable resources like solar and wind highlight the need for a stable and reliable energy supply. South Australia is a great example of trying to achieve that and not succeeding. Nuclear power provides consistent energy output, ensuring that the region can meet its energy demands even during peak consumption times and when renewable resources are insufficient. This viability is vital for both the residential consumers and local industries. Wind power can offer numerous benefits, but it also has potential negative impacts on the environment. Here, my major concerns with wind power is the land use conflicts. Wind farms require significant land for turbo placements and associated infrastructure, which can reduce the available land for agricultural activities, and this area is very much an agricultural area. This could lead to competition for land resources, particularly in regions where arable land is limited. The impacts on crop growth, the noise pollution. Wind turbines generate noise during operation, which can disrupt farm activities and overall tranquility of the rural areas. The noise stress livestock and impact their productivity. The visual aesthetics, and I don't know that I've seen anybody or have heard anyone that actually loves the look of all these wind turbines on the horizons. The interference with farming operations and how it can access and disrupt farming activities, including planting, harvesting and daily operations. Wildlife impact is never mentioned, where it poses a threat to the local wildlife, including birds, bats and anything else that's living around those turbines. These factors should be carefully considered when evaluating implementation of wind power in the agricultural areas. And it should be balanced with the renewable energy development and needs of the farming communities. I'll keep it even shorter. In conclusion, the Collie region stands to gain significantly from the adoption of nuclear power generation. By embracing this opportunity, we can enhance economic growth, support environmental sustainability and secure a reliable energy future for our community. I urge the inquiry to consider the positive implications of nuclear energy for Collie and to facilitate a path towards its implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. You're more than welcome to give that to the Secretariat and table it to the Secretariat for your opening statement, so you get the whole lot on there. Let's try this. We'll see how we go, but we haven't got much time left, so let's try one question each, and we'll start with you, Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, thank you all for your comprehensive evidence. Ms. Davies, in your submission, you talk about some of the advantages Collie has for a site, physical advantages for a potential nuclear site. Could you just explain those?
Well, currently, with the site that's been selected, Muja is obviously an existing site that requires probably little clearing as far as disturbance goes. It's got a fairly good buffer around it already. And I mean, there are also, other issues with it as far as water usage, etc., that need to be considered. I think I put that in the submission as well. But yeah, those are the. I mean, that's the main benefit is the already existing footprint that's there. So, and obviously workforce. There are other aspects of it that have existing workforce that the skills translate very well between coal and nuclear. And yeah, was there anything else particularly you wanted?
No, that was good.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Bennell.
Thank you, Chair. My question too is to yourself, Ms. Davies. I note in your opening statement that you made a lot of statements around the current pathway, removing the bias, and in particular a lot of comment around the offshore wind project near Bunbury, and a need to follow facts. And the thing that concerns me at the moment, and I wanted to just get your insight on this, is that under the LNP's proposal, they clearly talk about SMRs only for Collie. Not talking about any other type of reactor, although the Shadow Treasurer Minister has made some inference that might not be the case today, but until they clarify that formally on the record, this document stands. You do understand that SMR technology is not commercially viable or available across the globe right now, and in good conscience, do you think that that is something that Collie should be promised and pursue to solve your energy needs here in this state?
It's not right now, but it's very close. So
I've been saying that for 20 years.
well, I understand that there's the Chalk River in America that's due to be available in 2026. And fairly recently, we've had Amazon, Microsoft and Google invest in SMR technology as well. So I think...
Just to be clear, Ms Davies, there currently is not a commercially viable small modular reactor available across the globe.
I've heard you make this point before in the hearing, so I have been listening to them. And you're right, that's absolutely right. There is currently not that. But by the time, I mean, we are looking as a staged approach. I mean, you have to lift the moratorium. That will take some time. But by that stage, it will probably be 2026, and then we could ask that question and have a different answer. So at this point in time, no, you're right. But will there be in the near future? Yes, definitely. And having companies like Microsoft and Google and Amazon who have looming demand with AI technology investing in SMR technology, I think it's fair enough to say that it's really reasonably foreseeable that that will be a valid and viable technology in the near future.
Thank you, Mr Burnell. Dr Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. So just a question to the last lady, sorry, who was answering a question. So she was expressing support for the activities of Google and other companies which have been investing overseas in additional capacity for energy generation. Is that right?
So what was I expressing support for them? I was just acknowledging the fact that they are doing that.
Yeah, and so given that is the case, would you have concerns about the coalition's plan that was released at the end of last week, which would actually mean that Australia would have 40% less electricity in 2050, in which case we wouldn't be able to engage with things like AI or cryptocurrency?
No, I believe I've looked into that, and I've had I don't believe that's actually a fair representation of the demand of energy. I think that's not true at all. I had listened to some discussions from the Frontier Economics that did their report, and I actually would have to take it on notice to give you the answer in that confidently, but I can explain it. It was really a difference from, as I understand, between the step change scenario and a progressive change scenario, and I would rather have the time to take that on notice and give you a clear response to that, but I don't believe it's represented accurately as you described.
Thank you, Dr Ryan. Mr O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair, and Ms Davies, I'll stick with you, and for confirmation based on that previous question about Coalition's policy and what was published last week, the increase in electricity demand that the Coalition has adopted as the progressive scenario, which came from the market operator, looks at a 60% increase.
Right, yeah.
So the question, you were right, was misrepresentative
thank you.
of what in fact was published. My question, though, goes to your comments about the Bunbury offshore wind zone and some of the problems that arose through that process. Can you please outline that for the committee? It's very important for the committee to understand the alternate approach that we are currently embarking down.
Well, I mean, it's actually the reason I'm here is because I went along in very good faith to the consultation process that they had in Bunbury. With my background, I have, fairly good understanding of the legislation, and I had, a fairly reasonable query in relation to whether or not during the feasibility stage constructions of the wind turbines could occur. And I went up to somebody to ask them, who do I go to speak to this about? And she just said, you're wrong. This is wrong. Just, I'm done. And
is this at a community engagement meeting?
This is at a community engagement. Okay. Yeah, she said, put it in a submission and go away. Literally just like that. So I was like, wow, that's a really interesting reaction for a government representative and she was the senior lady, so I actually went up to her junior and she said, actually, that does seem valid. Do you know how to make a submission? And she was much more helpful. There was actually no information in any of the information about the impacts, the negative impacts. It was all the positive impacts of offshore wind. The consultation process itself was rapid. It was very biased in the sense that it never presented any of the negative impacts. And I mean, we have migratory whales, we have Ramsar birds, 2 wetlands, in fact 3, within the vicinity of the proposed zone. There's a lot of issues that they could have presented, and every single one was basically, negated by a statement that they had. The consultation itself was 60 days. In fact, if you count, if you take out the weekends and etc., then potentially borderline 60 days. But it wasn't available to everybody. It was like, during the day in some areas. And I understand that your consultation process is 2.5 years, which I think is really, commensurate with the risks. And in fact, the risks of the offshore wind should have been commensurate too with the time frame for the consultation and been significantly longer.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Dr. Molino. Thank you, Dr. Molino.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Molino. Your turn.
I was just I was just wondering about the witnesses that talked about waste. I was just wondering if they could flesh out. I think they talked about the problem of costing nuclear energy without factoring in the likely costs of managing waste over a very long period of time, and indeed the challenges of finding a site. Just wondering if you could flesh that out a little.
Well, I certainly don't have any figures at my fingertips, but we know it would be billions and billions. And got a quote here from Paul Murray from the US Department of Energy, who says everybody talks about shiny new reactors, but nobody ever talks about back-end management of the fuel that comes out of them. And, sorry, I can't talk figures, but you know what a massive cost it would be. And factoring in, like the Finns have had to do in their on Carlo Place, factoring in that our society may look nothing like we are. There could have been invasions and migrations and unspeakable things that teenagers watch in post-apocalyptic movies that I never watched. Those sorts of things that they've got to account for in dealing with waste permanently. And as for the temporary waste that Americans have accepted until now, apparently, with these canisters and swimming pools full of stuff, just all accidents waiting to happen and spillages waiting to happen, and that do from time to time, and you don't hear about them all. A little spillage here and a little spillage there and a bit of toxic contamination here and there. Sorry, that's probably all I'll say at this stage.
Thank you. Ms.
Bad
Mascarena.
news.
Thanks.
West Australians have voted, you could say, with their feet or actually their roofs. And so 1 in 3 households in Western Australia have solar panels on their roofs. If we introduce nuclear power, there is a real likelihood that people's solar panels will effectively not be able to pump electricity into the grid. And I think that households would be pretty annoyed at the oversupply of the nuclear power stations. Do you think that the general public would accept solar panels needing to be switched off?
No, more coal and gas, less renewables, what a nuclear power plant for Australia would mean in today's conversation. There's some people sitting over there who've got pay $30 a bill because they've got solar and batteries, and we were just talking about it earlier, just how angry they'd be if a nuclear power plant, which wants to provide about 37% of the NEM, I have no idea, possibly more like 10% in Collie. Is that right, Ted? 10%? No, I'm asking you about the percentage.
If the chair wishes to give me the floor, I will, but I'm not going to be.
Well, could you ask him to say how?
We're not opening the floor to questions. That can
All right,
be a conversation.
10%.
Have it talk to me after.
If it's 10%, if it's 10% here, but nuclear has to go all day and all night. And if the sun's shining brightly and there's plenty of solar, they're going to have to shut off people's solar power, and people will then have to be paying 31 cents, which is our West Australian price per unit, instead of 3 cents that they be paying, you know, when it comes through their solar plan. So yeah, they'd be angry, and if people knew that, that would not pass the pub test. It's got to get, the news has to get into the pub though, to spread to the people in the pub, because they're hearing other stuff that they think the other side will think will get through the pub.
I think Ms Davies would like to add something.
If I could just say something. For a start, I think what you've just said there is comparing that issue of supply and rooftop solar and having controls over putting that back into the grid, and you attributed that to nuclear. That's actually, nuclear is not on the, it's not even, it's not here.
That's what's been reported.
I know, but we're actually facing that real issue right now, and there's no nuclear. And what has actually caused that is the renewables and unreliable grid, right?
That's why we need gas and batteries.
Yeah. So we've got that issue right now, but we've got that issue right now without nuclear. So I really think
so. Nuclear would make it worse.
No, I don't think so. So nuclear is actually much because
that's why we're turning off our coal-fired
power stations. No, hang on a second.
stations.
The nuclear before, it was said earlier in the previous panel, they said that it didn't follow load and it had to be maintained at levels, and it didn't work well with renewables. And I know for a fact that that's not correct. In actual fact, and I would again have to take it on notice to give you the evidence if you wanted it to be. Yes, I'm absolutely happy to do that. Nuclear is load following, and it does complement renewables. So what you actually have just put forward there, I don't believe is accurate, and it's not reflecting the impact that there would be. So I think, again, I'd like to take that on notice and get you some evidence back for that.
You're welcome to. I worked in the energy space for over 12 years as an engineer.
Thank you, Ms Mascarenas. And my question is more to Ms Davies and Ms Tapscott here. You both talked about jobs for the area. You both talked about how having a nuclear power station here would be good economically for this area. It would create work. It would give power supply. It would give good, reliable power, as I think you said as well.
Yeah.
We have heard Michaelia Cash did make a comment and saying that this wouldn't be here until the second tranche, which is in the lead up to 2050. That's 25 years away. Do you think it's acceptable to wait that long and give people hope for that long?
I don't find it acceptable to wait that long. I think there's other options. We should be working towards this a little bit more quickly. But I understand this is a huge issue for Australia, especially as we've been a non-nuclear country for so long, that changing perceptions, and it's going to take a long, long time.
So that's a senior figure for the opposition saying that it's not going to be done until 2050.
Two questions here, are you, Chair?
Well, I was just more making a
clarifying
statement. Just clarifying.
Why don't we hear from the witnesses instead?
Yes, so... Just once, Mr. O'Brien, could we have it where you don't butt in for a whole day? Just once?
It's your
but
show.
anyway, it's okay. Well, apparently it's not sometimes, because you do your work. So, but anyway, let's go to you, Ms Davies.
Okay, well, the fact is you can't switch off the coal-fired power stations until you have a reliable replacement for it. So if it takes 25 years, that's how long it takes. I would hope that it didn't take that long, and that may have been a comment that was made when there did not seem to be a proposition of a change in government. So you don't know the context within which that comment was made, and I think those sorts of things should be considered. In actual fact, I think when there is a reliable replacement, then you can turn off the power stations. And is that ideal? Potentially not, but you know, what's also not ideal is having no electricity supply for a very resource-rich state that relies on industry as well. So I think that's our options.
Thank you, Ms Davies. I could go on to lots of questions here, but we're not going to. Unfortunately, we've run out of time today. Thank you for your time. If you've been asked to provide any additional information, including questions on notice, please forward it to the Secretariat by Friday the 10th of January 2025. Please note the responses to questions on notice will be published on the website as submissions to the inquiry. You will be sent a copy of the transcript of your evidence to assist you with answering questions taken on notice today, and you'll have an opportunity to request corrections to transcription errors.
A lovely way to finish.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank all of the witnesses that have came today. I'd like to thank the audience that have been here today. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank broadcasting. I'd like to thank the secretariats for all the work they do and do for us, and also thanks to all the committee members here today, and look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Thank you. I now officially close the meeting.